Good evening. Welcome to your City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, August 1st, 2017. It's 7 p.m. Regular meetings are held on the first and third Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. in council chambers here at City Hall. City Clerk, can you read the roll, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Davies? Councilmember Genoway?
Present.
Councilmember Jennings?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Minigar is still in China, and Mayor Sloswitz. Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right, so, okay, I'm just reading this now. We just had a last-minute cancellation for the invocation. Okay, so I'll provide the invocation. And again, we'll have Brownie Scouts Troop 4640 come forward to lead us in the pledge afterwards. If everyone can please rise. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the life you have given all of us. We thank you for the place we live, the beauty of its residency, and the luckiness that we have to all be here. It's all through your blessings that this has all occurred. Please help this council remain truthful to the goal and mission of the City of Laguna Niguel. Thank you for the residents who are here to support the City Council. Thank you for everyone from the Brownies to the seniors who are part of this community, who make it such a wonderful place to live. Please grant us guidance to discern right from wrong, truth from wrong, and let us all do the right thing. Amen. And if the Brownies can come forward, greatly appreciate it.
Audience attention, color guard advance. Color guard, present the colors. Would the Honorable Mayor, City Council members, and audience please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Audience may be seated.
Girls, if you could stay down there, we'll be down. We're going to get some pictures.
Okay, Ron, go to your girls.
Well, girls, this is a big show that you're part of. Look at all the people out here watching you. We want to thank you for being here and presenting the flag to start our meeting properly. You guys and gals, or you gals, are the future leaders of Laguna Niguel and wherever you choose to live later on in life. And we're very proud of you that you can come here and in front of a big crowd like this, do this and be part of the ceremonies. So what I want you to do is your moment in the spotlight, give your first name and maybe what school you're going to go or what school you go to, and then what grade you're going to be in when you start school here pretty soon. Okay? Just first name, school, and what grade, and pass the microphone down. Here you go.
My name is Madeline. And the school I go to is Mission View Christian School, and I'm going into second grade.
My name is Bryn, and I go to UCI Carolina Middle School, and I'm going to be in second grade right now.
My name is Ava, and the school that I go to is Community Roots Academy. My name is Hannah, and the school I go to is Community Roots Academy. Second grade. My name is Bella, and I go to Community Roots, and I'm going into second grade. My name is Emery, and I go to Community Roots, and I'm going to be in second grade. My name is Bella, and I go to Community Roots Academy, and I'm going to be in second grade. Hi, my name's Audrey, and I go to Community Roots Academy, and I'm going to go in second grade.
Wow, you girls did great. Step here. For a bunch of girls who just finished first grade going into second grade, you guys are awesome. But you know who else is awesome are your parents. Because we know it takes a lot of the parents. Can everyone raise their hand, or if you're not standing already, you know who the parents are? We know it takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication to get these girls around, to help them earn the badges that they all have. And, you know, so we want to give them a hand too. We thank you because, again, you're growing the future leaders. And girls, just keep at it, keep going, and we're very, very proud of you. Okay, so you're in charge. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. Good job. Paparazzi time. Okay, here we go.
Color guard dismissed.
There's no presentation, so we're going to convene back up. The community room across the hall is open. There's a screen there. We'll be showing live what's going on from here. If anyone wants to go over there and grab a seat, that is available. Any person wishing to address the city council on any matter, whether or not it appears on this agenda, is required to submit a completed gold-colored request to speak form. They're in the back over there on the right. And again, prior to being heard by the city council, each person will be given 3 minutes to speak. I know that there's a number of them, but again, if you haven't filled it out, please fill one of these out and give it right over here to Ms. Gomez, our city clerk. If anyone has any items, and again, if you have the item that it relates to, we'd appreciate it. Because what we're going to do, we have a fairly robust agenda. We're going to do the general request to speak, and then if you're requested to speak on a certain item, we're going to delay and wait till we get to that item, and we'll give you the request to speak at that time. Okay, so again, if you haven't filled one out, they're back over there to my right, your left, in that corner, and again, over to Ms. Gomez. Okay, I guess. Okay, and even this has something to do with the consent calendar. So as far as I can tell, there are no general item requests to speak. Everyone has a request to speak on an item on the agenda. We just wait for one last moment before we get final call on that. I mean, if the council will, you know, endure it, if someone comes in late, because we do have a big crowd, we'll be able to do that later, so that's okay? All right. Okay, that goes here. Okay, so since all these are related to, we still have some more. Hold on. Hey, Eileen, hold on. Eileen, turn around. Perfect. Does it matter which order they're in? Okay, great. All right then, so with that, I'm going to close the public communication. Everything's going to relate to either the consent calendar or the public hearings at the end. So we'll move that. We'll now move on to the consent calendar items 1 through 10. Are there any items that need to be pulled for comments and discussion? Again, because I have a request to speak, that's item number 7. Any other ones? Mr. Jennings? Ms. Genoway? Ms. Davies? Take a motion to move the balance?
I move the post.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, request to speak on item number 7. Item 7 is the Laguna Niguel Historical Society, American Legion Post 281, and Women's Auxiliary 281 request for fee waivers, use of Sea Country Senior Center and Community Center. We have Bill Lieber. Bill, you have 3 minutes once you start speaking. If you give your name and address, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Bill Lieber, 30362 Via Corona, Laguna Niguel. Laguna Niguel. I'm just here to see if you have any questions of what we're asking. As you know, the American Legion is self-funding. We help with veterans with PTSD. We also just gave away $7,500 in scholarships to our high school students. And so this is one of our fundraisers we're doing in conjunction with the Laguna Niguel Historical Society. And we're just seeing if we can get the fees waived.
Thank you, Mr. Lieber. Any questions for him?
Okay.
Please.
I just want to thank you and everyone part of this group. You have done so much for, our veterans, and I'm grateful because I know you're one of the people that got this unit started, post 281, and I think it's a great event. It's great to see you guys are doing some fundraising, so you definitely have my support.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
And I'd also like to commend you. You've really raised PTSD awareness in our community, and that makes a significant impact on our veterans and their families. So appreciate your work in that. And I believe this also is a fundraiser with the auxiliary as well.
The auxiliary and the Historical Society.
Okay, very good. All groups that serve our community well.
Yes.
And only a comment that, one of the things that we look for in fee waivers is the efforts that the groups themselves put on to try to raise funds and for their projects and things. And few people could match the efforts that you all do in raising funds. So it's with pleasure that I support this item tonight. So, and wish you well.
Thank you.
Entertain a
Thank you.
motion.
I'll make a motion.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, that moves us on to our public hearing to consider the extension of temporary moratorium prohibition of the establishment of congregate living facilities in residential zoning districts. At this time, I'd like to have Jonathan Orduña, Planning Manager, provide a staff report. But Jonathan, hold on 1 second. Again, I know there's a lot of people that just came in. You can go across the hall. There are seats over there in the community room directly across. You'll be able to see everything, and if you're going to speak, you can come back in here and do whatever. It is a little bit warm in here. I see a lot of members of the audience, and I know myself are fanning themselves. Is there anything else we could do? Okay. Okay, thank you so much. All right, Jonathan, please, staff report.
Good evening, Mayor Slusewitz and council members. We have for your consideration this evening an extension of the existing moratorium on the establishment of congregate living facilities in residential zoning districts. The moratorium was originally adopted by the council on August 2nd of 2016 in response to a growing number of concerns from residents regarding a growing number of congregate living facilities and the related impacts to surrounding neighborhoods. The moratorium is currently set to expire on August 3rd of the current year, so just in a couple days here. Along with adoption of the moratorium, the City Council initiated a zoning code amendment to consider new regulations for congregate living facilities. This zoning code amendment is making its way through the city process, has been reviewed by the Planning Commission, and staff anticipates presenting the draft ordinance to the council in the upcoming months. However, to avoid regulatory a lack of regulations in the interim, staff is recommending that the City Council extend the existing moratorium for a period of 1 year to expire on August 3rd of 2018. And in closing, just as a reminder, this is a public hearing item, and therefore a notice was circulated in the Laguna Niguel News approximately 10 days ago, and it requires a 4/5 vote of the City Council to approve the extension. So with that, we'll conclude my comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, there's a lot of public comments, but if we have any quick questions ahead of time from the council. Okay, let's move on to the public hearings now open to receive testimony from the public to consider extension of the temporary moratorium prohibiting the establishment of congregate living facilities and residential zoning districts. We have a number of these, City Clerk. Madam City Clerk, is there any more? And if anyone else wants to add to it, we are on the public hearing item regarding congregate living facilities. There are forms in the back to my right, to your left. You can fill them out. Please give them to the City Clerk. We've got a number of speakers. And again, you have 3 minutes each. If you could just give your name and address, and then your 3 minutes. We have Louis Doolian. I hope I had that right. Louis?
My name is Louis Doolian. I live at 14 West Cliff. I'm addressing the council tonight because I have two perspectives I feel I could give some insight to the negative effects of sober living homes that might have an effect on our city. First, I work as a primary counselor for a drug and alcohol treatment center. I have over 3,000 field hours and have recently passed my state certification for drug and alcohol counseling. I'm very familiar with addicts early in recovery. Second, my family has just moved here from Costa Mesa, which has been overrun by sober living homes. One of the major contributing factors in our decision to move here was the oversaturation of sober living homes there. While federally protected under the ADA, the sober living home industry is completely unregulated. The sober livings are not held accountable by any governing agency. Therefore, there is no protocol for the ratio of staff to residents, no policies in place for how to manage their behavior, no assessment process or criteria to dictate whether or not someone is an appropriate candidate for residency in a sober living. Most sober livings will allow anyone to move in if they test clean and write a check that doesn't bounce. There is no process to see if a potential resident is medically or psychologically stable enough to become a resident. Most sober livings deal with residents that relapse by evicting them, leaving the residents to wander an unfamiliar place, looking for any means necessary to feed their addiction. Most have come to treatment from out of state, have no resources, and are left homeless and desperate, leaving them to resort to crime or panhandling in order to survive and feed their addictions. The following issues we dealt with were directly associated to sober livings while residents in Costa Mesa, ranging from inconvenient to dangerous. Countless car break-ins, burglaries, stolen packages, prowlers lurking in backyards, dense secondhand smoke, difficulty finding parking, discarded used needles found in streets and alleyways, residents of sober livings fighting in the street. One of our neighbors woke early one December morning to discover someone stealing his children's Christmas presents. The perpetrator was a man recently kicked out of sober living. Our neighbor had to defend himself with a flashlight. Another neighbor who lived just a few doors down from a sober living found a stash of heroin and needles in her front yard where her children play. The residents of the sober livings had stashed them there because they could come and go from the sober living and not worry about the house manager finding their drugs stashed in a neighbor's yard. Most of the sober living homes are managed by unqualified staff that have no education in drug and alcohol counseling. The criteria for most sober living home managers is having a few months of sobriety themselves. The sober living situation in Costa Mesa has not only created a safety and welfare concern for the families that call the city their home, but has also caused a strain on city resources and finances. The
You have
cost-
30 seconds.
Oh, jeez, fuck. All right. I basically just want to say that I do care about addicts getting the help that they need, but as a resident of a city that has an abundance of sober livings, I've seen the negative effects of it, and I would not like to see that happen in this city as well. I feel Laguna Niguel has plenty of sober livings already operating, and it would not benefit the city to have more operating. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Julian. And again, I still see people walking in late. There is a hall across the hallway if you want to find a seat that you could be more comfortable, perhaps. Gerard Thompson, please.
Hi, my name is Jerry Thompson. I live at 18 West Cliff in Laguna Niguel. In addition to kind of echoing some of the comments Lou's made, the problem I have is I see these as no more than businesses. These are businesses that are operating in a residential area. They don't fit the residential character. They don't, at least by my reading, I don't see where they fit the character of a single-family home or as the single housekeeping unit as it was laid out. Probably many people in this room saw an article that was in Sunday's Orange County Register regarding the city of Dana Point and all of the issues that it is experiencing. And I've been a resident here for 25 years in Laguna Niguel, and I certainly don't want to see those type of issues brought to our city There are safety issues, and I don't really understand how a business, there's a lot of money in these. If you do the research, these treatment centers get a lot of money. It's been proliferated now since the Affordable Care Act mandates that treatment has to be offered. And these things will be springing up because it's very lucrative for people that are operating these. And there is a place, as Lou indicated, but I don't think that we need to see a proliferation of these in our city of Laguna Niguel. I'm speaking for the city on behalf of everyone because, you know, this is, as the mayor alluded to in his invocation, it's a great place to live. People have come here for a reason. You know, we don't want to see this city deteriorate and have these type of issues. It's a safety issue. It's a security issue. It's unregulated. You can have people that come in, they rent, they don't have a place to go, they become a squatter. You have those types of issues that are going to be happening. It's very difficult to evict these people. If anybody in this room has ever had a rental property, it's a very difficult process. So I support the recommendation to extend the moratorium for another year and to do whatever is possible within the city's purview to whether it's regulating or whatever the conditions need to be to, make this city, continue to keep the city safe and make it difficult for these types of facilities to just proliferate. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. John Barnett.
Hi, I'm John Barnett. I live at 22 Blue Horizon, San Marin. Thanks, Mr. Mayor and council people, for giving us this chance to tell you what we think. I think, like most people here, I'm sympathetic that people need help. In fact, I have close family members who've had addiction problems. I know one person very close to me went on a wilderness retreat. It seemed to work very well. San Marin, as you know, as many of our communities in this great city, house an elementary school, Malcolm, where my kids went. And on my block, there are many families with toddlers. I can think of one in particular where they have 3 kids, 2, 5, and 6 years old. There was a house directly across the street that was recently for sale, which was sold to someone who rents the house out to a nice family. But these people were terrified by the prospect of what you just heard from the 2 people before me as to what might become of the community that we all love. I would say also in this world where Amazon is putting everyone out of business, there must be strip malls or different vacancies in commercial areas, maybe light industrial areas, where a proper facility could be set up because, like I said, I think most people with a heart do care about other people. But all the problems we've heard about, I've heard them all from talking to people in my neighborhood, the midnight EMT visits, the cars broken into, screaming and yelling at all hours of the night. It's probably not family friendly or an optimal solution for people with toddlers, which there are a lot of in our great city here. So I think if we're really honest, we could all agree it's a money-making project. And I imagine you on the council will probably hear from some very skilled pitchmen as to why this is a very good idea for the city. And I would ask only that you ask them if they've opened any of these sober living facilities next door to them, or 2 houses away, or 3 houses away. And if they haven't, why haven't they? Because I think it's pretty clear that
You have 30 seconds.
nobody really wants to create a situation of a lack of safety in their own neighborhood. So that's all I have to say. And thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett. Howard Revere. Just to prepare, next up will be Richard Belliston.
Good evening. I'm Howard Revere. I live at 43 Poppy Hills in Laguna Niguel. And about 20 years ago, when we moved here from Michigan, my neighbors came over and asked me if I knew anything about termites. And I said, no, I don't. And they said, well, all the houses, there's two kinds of houses in Southern California. Those that have termites and those that are going to have termites. I say the same thing about sober living homes. If you don't have one in your community, there are good chances you probably will in the near future. As many people have alluded to, it's greed, it's money, it's a chance to make a quick buck. But I showed you, this was the May the 21st headline in the Orange County Register that says, mainlining money for the region's fraudulent drug treatment centers, junkies are big business. Follow-up, May 24th, under the heading Crime, $22 million urine test scheme alleged. DA's office charges owners of sober living facilities. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's 7 pages devoted to this in these 2 papers. And it's got all the details and why and how bad it is, and it'll curl your hair. But it won't curl mine because it's a little late for that. However, I will say to the homeowners, you have an opportunity through your homeowner associations to work together through your property management, through the attorney for your homeowner association. Please do not try to tackle these people on your own. Use your homeowner association and the attorney. Do what they tell you and help where you can. I would also say that all of us in homeowner associations should share knowledge and work together. And the reason for working together through our attorneys and our homeowner association is people who work together for a common good purpose get the attention of the politicians, and that makes a difference. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you that sober living homes are just like termites. If you don't do something to protect your home, they will ruin the value of your property. And I would like to thank the council for extending this, and I had my own version of that. I was hoping you could do a study maybe that would last somewhere around 20, 30 years maybe before you approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Revere. Mr. Belliston. Up after Mr. Belliston will be Sheila Redye. To be next.
Richard Belliston. I live at 12 Greystone Way in Ocean Ranch. I represent the Ocean Ranch Homeowners Association. We've had an experience lasting since December of last year where it wasn't a specific sober living facility, but it was its first cousin with a homeowner that leased their home. And I would call upon all residents that are here to be very, very, very careful in leasing their homes out to make sure that their lease prevents these kinds of problems. In our case, the homeowner cooperated with the association and spent, I don't know exactly how many thousands of dollars, but it was quite a lot of money to get the parties evicted from the home in Ocean Ranch. The lessee paid 2 months rent, stayed there 6 months. That was totally in accordance with what he did in the prior home that he had leased in South Peak, except theirs went on for a whole year. That particular entity is leasing a home up in Coronado Point now, I understand. But I would definitely like to encourage the council to extend the moratorium. More importantly than that, or equally important, is there's got to be some active means of enforcement of the moratorium. because these entities, they totally ignore what the laws are. They do nothing about it. They basically just kind of challenge you to do anything about them because they're sober living facilities. They're protected by the federal government. You can't do anything about it. Largely, they may be right, but if we have an ordinance that prevents them from license, we should have some means of being able to enforce that ordinance. We all agree that these parties need help, but it needs to be conducted in a commercial district and a facility that is not in a residential neighborhood. That's why we have the zoning laws we have. And we need to enforce those zoning laws to the maximum extent possible so that we don't have businesses being conducted in the residential neighborhoods that we have. So I think with that, I've pretty much expressed the basic opinions of our 400 residents in Ocean Ranch, and we're part of the Bear Brand Master Association over there. I think we have about 1,300 members, and we're all very united in trying to prevent this type of a cancer from starting to grow further in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belliston. Sheila Redyan, and then afterwards will be Shane Glass.
Hi, good evening. First of all, I want to thank you, and for all those that have spoken before me, I echo their sentiment 100%. And also, I'll keep this really short. I'll throw a number at you, 33%. 33% is the percent increase in crime in the city of Costa Mesa, according to the Orange County Register, after the induction of sober living homes. 33% in 2015. Raising a family in this day and age is hard enough, and our community does not need to be taxed with additional challenges. And that's the bottom line. Thank you.
Do you mind giving your name in for the record, please?
Oh, sorry. Sheila Redjai, 42 South Peak.
Thank you so much. Shane Glass, and up after will be Lee Stedman. Name and address, sir. Thank you.
My name is Shane Glass. I live at 1 New Haven here in Laguna Niguel. I've lived in Laguna Niguel for 25 years. I have a business in Laguna Niguel for 35 years and commercial property in Laguna Niguel for 30 years. Been here a long time and very much part of the community. I very much support the idea of extending this moratorium. I think that this moratorium should be extended the full year, and I think the council should consider making it a permanent moratorium and not just an extension. I also support the council's efforts to look into this matter and look at some zoning possibilities to consider taking what is essentially a business and placing a business in a place that a business should be. I have many tenants in some of my properties. I wouldn't expect a residential community to have a jeweler or a grocery store or a contractor or a woodworking shop. These are not appropriate businesses to have in a community. If you're in a community that's intended for people to live, for children to play, it should not be a place for a business. These sober living houses are businesses. They make $20,000 a month per person in those businesses. They make a lot of money, and they're businesses. They deserve to have a place to be in a city like Laguna Niguel, but not in residences. I support the idea that the city consider putting those businesses in zoning that would support them. Commercial properties, possibly public properties. The city should be thinking about ways to find facilities for these businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. Lee Stedman. And up next will be Don Davis.
Lee Stedman, 18 vintage, and I was here a year ago, standing right here before you for 3 minutes. So by the way, I better start my watch or my iPhone. So, Mayor, members of council, staff, I was a strong advocate for the moratorium a year ago, and I stand here as a stronger advocate for a continuation of that moratorium. There's nothing about this that looks good or is beneficial to the city or our neighborhoods. I know what happens in neighborhoods when one of these sober living homes comes in. Not only is it safety and security, but it's valuations of our own properties, which affect us personally when we're close and contiguous to any property that has sober living homes, and certainly that affects the tax base of the city as well. But the Riviera of Rehab, which is what Malibu to San Clemente is called, seems to be the place where there's a plethora of these homes, and they advertise nationally. And what's interesting is that one of the biggest providers in this industry is called Sovereign Health. And Sovereign Health was just raided by the FBI in June. They have offices in San Clemente as well as 3 other places in the state. And they're under a criminal investigation, according to the Orange County Register. And I think that what's interesting about their practice is they have something called body brokering, where drug-addicted patients are essentially sold to rehabs that may or will pay the most for them in their insurance coverage. And once their insurance runs out, they're kicked to the curb, essentially. So someone prior to me mentioned what's happening in Dana Point with the homeless population. These people are brought in from out of state. They have no family here, and so it's easy for them to go into basically to go outside and become homeless because there's no support system for them. So I would really encourage council to essentially vote for another year, and I think that's legally all you can do, if I'm not mistaken. But they absolutely do not belong in any of our neighborhoods. I don't think they belong in the city, period. To see them in business sections of the city and zoning, business zoning, that seems to be more logical. But,
Yeah, 20
but
seconds.
30 seconds. But I think that really the problems that they cause are problematic for the entire city. It's not just an issue for our neighborhoods, and that's it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steadman. Next up, Don Davis, followed by Dan Abrams.
Hello, my name is Dawn Davis, and I reside at 29931 Happy Sparrow Lane here in Laguna. Thank you for allowing us to share our thoughts. I bring a little bit of personal experience to this. I have 5 children, aging 8 to 21, and I'm a recent move here. I've relocated here from the Inland Empire. And I love it here. I love my children, and I just... we love the fact that it's green and there's no graffiti, and where we came from, which was Riverside and out there, was a little bit more rough. And my story, I think, will lend a little bit of personal side to it. My former spouse was an addict, and we found ourselves struggling and living out there, and we thought, it came to a point where he had to go somewhere, he had to get help, or our marriage was over, our relationship was over. And he didn't really want to, but he needed to, and so he finally agreed and said, okay, I'll go to rehab. So we get online, his mother agrees to pay the $24,000 to go to rehab, and we find a place at the beach at Dana Point. So, okay, he'll agree to go because it's at the beach, and he can go have a relaxing time, address his challenges, learn how to be a better person and all of that at the beach. Well, we have the benefit in Laguna Niguel of being close proximity to the beach. This is something that's advertised to the desperate families who are looking for that kind of help. And so he came down and immediately went into a place in Dana Point, and he ended up at a sober living home there. I visited there on a few occasions, and very quickly, to not take up too much of my time, it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen, because coming from the Inland Empire and looking at this beautiful neighborhood, this home was not taken care of. The men that were at this particular home, there was 9 to 12 of them. They came and went because many of them didn't succeed in their goals. he didn't succeed in his goals, but so that's why he's my former spouse. But you know, it was tragic because there were these people who, yes, they do need help, but they were lost. And they were loitering in the neighborhood, they were chain smoking, there was dense smoke, just dirt and filth. And like Lewis spoke of, everything he said I saw with my own eyes. I saw people hiding their drugs around and just not being safe people. So I think more than anything, this is not an appropriate thing or a match for our beautiful city that has such wonderful, lofty goals. So I just wanted to say I support the moratorium. I do think it should be made permanent. This is just not a fit for who we are as a people and a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Dan Abrams, followed by Rayford Kingston.
Hi, I'm Dan Abrams of 29601 Ivy Glen. I thought I was a pretty young guy until I realized I've been living in Ivy Glen for 32 years. When I moved here, I was told Laguna Niguel was the second Beverly Hills, you know, and we were better than Beverly Hills. And what a beautiful community until the last year. Last year, we've had 2 crime incidences that have happened right in our street. First is thanks to our police chief's police force. They caught a young gal breaking into my wife's car. She was actually in it, ravaged everything all around, all the doors open, and through his investigation, he caught her in the act with her 12-step book that was in the car, who just happened to be living at one of the Silver living homes just up the street on Anna Maria. Other second incidents we've had happen, but here they have rules. And if the residents don't abide by the rules, they kick them out. Well, here we got them sitting on the street with their suitcase, a young gal, what is she, 20, 21 years old, sitting with suitcases, begging for money. And this is right on Ivy Glen and Anna Maria. So I appeal to our city council as a unanimous vote. Please keep the moratorium. Keep Laguna Niguel safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Rayford Kingston, followed by our final speaker, Audrey Grider.
Good evening. My name is Rayford Kingston. I live at 12 Bethany. Just want to start off with a personal story. I moved to Laguna Niguel in 2012, primarily because Laguna Niguel, for me, embodies everything that you want for raising a young family. I have 3 young kids, a boy and 2 girls, and we live in Crestoville right down the street. Cul-de-sac neighborhood, gated community, great park, and we're proud to allow our kids to be able to go up to the park, play basketball, and run around with their friends without fear of the types of things that you see in a lot of places around this country. And what we're seeing now with the encroachment of sober living facilities that the other speakers have clearly documented as primary business entities, totally incongruent with a residential environment. The way that they exist is they find safe harbor under the ADA, and then they have a classification for the individuals living there as a family unit. Now, and that allows 6 people unaffiliated to live in a residence under current law. The issue, of course, is that it's not a family unit any of us have ever heard of. None of us has to pay $20,000 to our family in order to live in a room for a month. And the fact is these are wildly profitable businesses that create overwhelming incentive for folks to convert their properties into these types of facilities over time. The fact is they're businesses, just like you wouldn't want to live next door to a gas station or a 7-Eleven, you're not going to want to live next door to one of these sober living facilities. And the fact is the negative impact is well documented. A good friend of mine is a paramedic for San Clemente, and he describes ad nauseum the number of addicts that he has to pluck off the street on a nightly basis. In fact, he consumes the majority of his time now in terms of service, which is dealing with the influx of addicts from mostly out of state. So the fact is that Laguna Niguel, going back to '65, was originally founded as one of the main master plan communities in Orange County. It was designed for families to grow and prosper and rear their children. And to this day, I believe it meets those goals. However, it's the responsibility of this committee to uphold those values that were the part of the foundation of this city, and to do so by enacting and completing and supporting the existing moratorium on these types of facilities. I would also encourage this council to think more broadly about what can be done in order to affect these ongoing facilities. As I mentioned, there is safe harbor for under certain conditions. However, perhaps more draconian or more forceful laws may be considered. I would offer the recent example in Laguna Beach, where a full prohibition of smoking in all outdoor places was enacted. I suggest that that was primarily aimed at curbing the encroachment, again, of sober living facilities within their community.
You have 20 seconds.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kingston. Audrey Ryder.
Audrey Greider, 30 Mandalay. First of all, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to talk. My husband and I have been residents of Laguna Niguel since 1987, before incorporation. We've raised our kids here and we love this city. And I have two comments. The first is that if you were to look into the public records of many of the people who occupy these sober living facilities, you would find that they have criminal records, some guilty of crimes that would be too heinous to discuss here at this time. And the other is that we've been talking a lot about addiction. The fact is that in addition to substance abuse, many of these facilities also open their doors for dual diagnosis, which for those of you who may not know what that is, means that in addition to addiction, these people are suffering from mental challenges, psychological diagnoses, and that increases their instability and, in my opinion, increases risk to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ryder. Okay, it opens it up. We've got a staff report. We've heard public comments. Public hearing is now closed. Let's begin discussion on the item. I'd like to go first. Mr. Jennings?
Yeah, thank you very much. I was not on city council last year when this moratorium went into place. However, I did support it. I now have a seat on city council, and I continue to support it. I think it's the right thing to do. I echo the sentiments of each of the speakers. I'm very mindful of the problems, and I echo and applaud the efforts of those in our federal the federal Congress who are attempting to get a bill that would push this local control down to us so we can make these decisions for you. As each of the speakers noted, we have a problem, and our problem is limited by the ADA and some other things. We're doing what we can. I think it's the right thing to do. It's an honorable thing to do. And this has my full support. Thank you.
Ms. Genoway?
I echo the comments of Councilman Jennings. This has my full support. I was on the council when we originally passed this, and I think it's important that we extend it, especially while we are waiting for a pending zoning code amendment to come back from our community development department. So this would make sure that we don't have any lapse in regulation during that time. And I want to be sure the residents know that we are working with our federal and our state legislators on legislation to bring this down to the local level. It's been very frustrating for us here at the city on there's certain things that we can and cannot do because of the ADA requirements regarding these homes. So, but we are all working together because we hear you. We live in the neighborhoods too. This is our community, and I'm just so grateful that we are in a city where so many people will come out to participate in the public hearing because your voices are important. But we hear you, and I am in full agreement with all that was said tonight and look forward to extending this moratorium.
Ms. Davies?
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for coming as well. This has been a concerning issue that we've been dealing with since almost 2012, and I know that I did work with Senator Pat Bates when this first came out. The sad part is that there's been over 135 bills that have been sent up to Sacramento, and they've all been shot down regards to sober living group homes. The bottom line is it's safety. You know, we want the safety for those that are in there being treated, as well as the safety of the residents. I was just appointed to the ACCLC Sober Living Committee, and we're working hard to bring new legislation. We're looking to bring a pilot program right now that would come down here and monitor the treatment centers, and it's a start, and it looks like it might be moving. So if you want more information and we can get letters to push that through Sacramento, that would be fantastic. Again, as Councilmember Genoway said, we're working with Congressman Darrell Issa in regards to zoning and other issues. But it's very important that we continue. Like I says, this is about legislation, but we need support because we're not getting it. We're also looking out to other states because this isn't just our issue. It's just not our issue here in Orange County. You go up into Santa Barbara, Santa Monica, it's major problems up there as well. So we're reaching out to other states too so that we can start getting support through other states. So when we get this to the federal level, we'll have more support. So do know that we're working on this. This is actually one of my main priorities. I know it's been one of all our main priorities, and I completely support continuing this. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I just want to acknowledge and share your sentiments. We hear you. We'd love to stop the problem before it starts, but as mentioned by on this dais, local control is fleeting at best. We are doing the best we can. Obviously, extension of this moratorium is one thing. We're working hard for workable solution. We're watching what's going on all around the state and around the country with this issue, as it is a national problem. Obviously, we want to extend it, and to the degree that we find some solutions in the future that will allow us to outlaw it, obviously, I think the council shares your sentiment. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Second.
Thank you, that we go ahead and, Attorney Dixon, do I need to read all four, or can I just make a motion to move A, B, C?
Councilmember Davies, what we really need to have you do at this point is to read the title of the ordinance in full, and then waive the reading and adopt the ordinance, those three items.
Okay, so I'll just go all the way down. I make a motion that we, we've done this, would hold a public hearing and receive testimony regarding extension of the temporary moratorium prohibiting the establishment of congregate living facilities in residential zoning districts, read title to the ordinance 2017-XXX, which is an interim urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Laguna Niguel, California, extending a temporary moratorium prohibiting the permitting or establishment in residential zones or congregate living facilities, subject to reasonable accommodations, to allow time for consideration of appropriate amendments to the city municipal code, waive the reading of the full text of the ordinance, and adopt the ordinance.
It's already moved and second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. We just have extended it. We have a few more business items. I think most people might be interested in this. Let's move on to the first item. This is my request as the interim city manager and director of finance to prepare additional analysis of West Coast arborists. I recommend the city council submit this agreement and look at the pertinent document and refer that over to the district attorney. We do have a couple speakers.
Mayor, I'd like
on
to
this.
make a motion that we move City Council Item 1 until Mayor Pro Tem is able to participate, as well as until the entire council is provided with the complete agreed-upon procedure report from the Poon Group.
I second.
Well, this has nothing to do with the Poon Group. This is an item, so it's irrelevant. This is an item where what we're looking at is an analysis of West Coast arborists. It has nothing to do with the Poon Group whatsoever.
You know, once again, I'm making a motion that we move the City Council item until Mayor Pro Tem is able to participate, as well as the council is provided with an entire, the agreed-upon procedure. So,
Ms. Davies, I hear you, but your logic this doesn't have anything to do with the procedures. This is zero to do with the procedures. I asked the city finance director for a report on West Coast arborists. We can all ask for any report on anything we want. As the mayor, I can put the item on the agenda. I did put the item on the agenda.
yes, you can,
Here's what I'll
Mayor.
do.
Yes, you can, but I also have the right to make a motion to table it and move it until we have a 5-person council. If you'd like to discuss it, I'm happy to, and I'd be, happy that people would hear my reasoning why I'm doing this.
I'd just make a note that we did receive comment from the Mayor Pro Tem that he was going to be out of town, that he wasn't going to leave town in the event that we had anything of substance on this agenda item. He was the second on the investigation or with that, and I think it's appropriate. I feel that that because he and the mayor were the two that were put that on the agenda, that it's important. And he indicated last week, 7 days ago yet, that he thought that a referral to the district attorney was premature. That was his comments on the dais from last week. So I'm very reluctant to move forward without a full body here tonight.
All right, Mr. Jennings, you said that the mayor pro tem put this item on there. Where do you see his name on here, sir?
No, I'm talking about the audit itself. It's the mayor and the mayor pro tem that created the issue which related to the audit. That's part of the procedure that we've been talking about for the last week.
This isn't the audit. This is, again, I just want to be real clear, and again, if you want to direct this thing towards what's germane here, this is prepare additional analysis of West Coast arborists. Okay, that's it. I'm not mentioning audit. I'm not mentioning Poon Group. I'm not mentioning Mayor Pro Tem. He had nothing to do with this. Sir, again, I hear you, but I don't hear how it pertains to this item, which has nothing to do with Poon Group or
Well,
Fred
exactly,
Minigar.
exactly 7 days ago, we had a full and complete discussion about the Poon Group's review of the financial documents relating to West Coast Arborist. It was a 4-to-1 vote that we further investigate this, and that is being investigated by our city attorney and outside counsel. That is ongoing. It's happening right now. And I believe
as far as
that
I know, that there was no investigation of Poon Group or West Coast Arborist. I think the investigation had to do with the allegations regarding me.
No, I think you're completely mistaken. That had everything to do with the review of the audit that was then in draft form, that I understand is still in draft form. And I'm sorry, is this funny to you, sir?
Yeah, you guys bearing the audit, it's actually, I keep wondering what it is, sir, that you are hiding personally.
Excuse me, Mayor Slusowitz, that is totally uncalled for. We do not have an audit yet. We have not received the final report. So it's amazing that more is being said to the reporters than is being said to your council colleagues about an audit. What we are saying here is we don't have the audit. Let's wait till we have the final report, and then we will address it. Now, at the last meeting, Mayor Pro Tem Minigar specifically said it was premature to send this to the district attorney. In here, in your report, that's a recommendation that this be sent to the district attorney. We should have a full council to make that to have that discussion and to make that decision for this city. Mayor Pro Tem Minigar made it very clear that he would be in China. He offered to cancel his trip to China if there was something important coming up that was not regarding this city, and he was told that what was going to be on the agenda had already been announced. So we are asking that we continue this to the next meeting, or we can schedule a special meeting once Mayor Pro Tem Minigar is here, but he should be part of this discussion. We should also have the audit report. We haven't had the audit report, as my understanding is that normally we would have had this in May, but we haven't received it because of interference with getting this report to us.
And to make it clear, we're looking for the AUP.
We are looking for
correct?
the AUP.
Correct, not the audit.
The financial audit of the city takes place in the fall, usually October, and then in November we have the report. What we're talking specifically about is the AUP, the agreed upon procedures. So we're requesting, it's been moved and seconded, that this be tabled to a meeting when Mayor Pro Tem Minigar will be here.
No, Ms. Genoa, you just said that normally the audit report is released in May, and then you said it's usually in October or November.
No, we're talking about two
The
different
AUP,
things.
it's none of it's usually released in May. There's been no attempt. I brought forth last meeting on July 24th, the only documentation that was brought on the agenda item regarding the documentation, and it clearly stated that the audit is between the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, the AUP, the Mayor Pro Tem, until they're satisfied with the findings, then they turn it over to staff, and there's really no time frame on that. However, this has nothing to do with the audit, but I make a concession here because we've got a large crowd. Obviously, they're interested in all of our reactions with this discussion. So I will pull the vote. So we have no vote on this item whatsoever, other than we have a discussion on this item. And then to the degree that we discuss it, and we need to discuss it further when the AUP is released, which has been told for 3 weeks now that it would be 1 day. And Mr. Erlinson, are we still 1 day away from doing that?
So the draft final with management's responses will be received by this city tomorrow. A copy of that draft report will be disseminated to all 5 council members, and at which time we will, I'm hoping to get it on the August 15th regular council meeting agenda.
The timing for tonight is impeccable. It'll be ready tomorrow.
I'd like to make a suggestion, if I may, Mayor. First of all, we have a motion and a second.
We're still discussing that, aren't we?
Correct. So, but I know you said you wanted to pull the item, but I believe we have a motion to table, to move the item completely to another time. But what I'd like to do is, and just a few words, you know, it is imperative that the mayor pro tem be part of this vote. Besides the mayor, he was the other council member that was part of this AUP report. I feel it's vital that we as a council allow him to give his input. I want to hear it. You know, his input could be, could be very effective in regards to how I decide how I'm going to vote. And he has the right to vote. This is a very serious decision here. And for us not to have 5 members, the entire council, vote on this is irresponsible. And once again, he came to me as well and said, you're not gonna do anything, right? I can go on vacation. So the mayor was well aware of this. This email came to us 7 days ago, but you decided to ignore it and put this item on. This is a vital item that we're gonna vote on. Also, no one is trying to bury this item. I think we would all like to see this done so that we can move to important city business. But there's a right process that we must follow. We owe it to ourselves and the city of Laguna Niguel to make sure we have all the facts. Those facts include a complete AUP report from the Poon Group, accountants and advisors. It would be irresponsible for any of us to approve or oppose this item until all the facts are on the table. That is why I made the motion to move this item until the mayor pro tem can attend, as well as we have a completed AUP report. Now, we have a special meeting set up for August 7th, I believe, and that's through dealing with allegations regarding the mayor's behavior. What I recommend, if the council agrees, because this is an important item, I want this done with so that we can move on. I recommend that we move that special meeting to the next week. Let's use that date so we can put item 1 on there. Mayor pro tem will be back on August 5th. I do believe you do need all signatures to sign off on that. You know, if we can reach him and get him to look at that on Sunday and approve it, then we can move on. So that way, I'm happy to go ahead and release that special meeting, put item 1, your agenda item, on there. So again, we'll have all the facts, we can make a sound decision. I think that's what's best. I'm not going to sit here and make a decision, first of all, without another council member, without a person that is part of this committee, so I can get his input. We all deserve the facts here. We don't have the facts. We don't have a completed report from an outside company we have paid for to actually do this AUP review as well as the audit. Who wants to make a decision like that? This is a serious decision, making allegations to send this to the DA. Serious. So you better believe I'm going to make sure I have all the facts. So when I go ahead and if I vote yes or I vote no, I know that I had all the facts. But to go ahead and do that without a final complete report, being able to ask this company questions so that I can get answers from them and not interpretations from others, that's not the way we're supposed to run. We're supposed to do this the right way. So we wait, we move it if the council approves, we take August 7th, we put this on, so this is all we're dealing with. We're not dealing with other items as well. And I apologize, Mr. Street. I see that you're going to do a presentation. We weren't told about that until about an hour ago, so that wasn't part of the existing agenda. I welcome you to come back and please give that. That's very important to me as well. I want all the facts. I want all the information. When I
I
make
move the
this decision,
question.
it's important.
I'm calling the question.
I get time to talk. Come on, guys. You're talking about a serious discussion here.
Are you,
You're
I'm
saying
sorry,
that
he
this
just
is
called the
serious.
question.
I just called the question.
Question's been called.
Again, she's talking about the AUP. This is not the AUP. This is West Coast Arborist.
And West
She's
Coast is on
saying,
that
excuse me,
AUP.
I gave you plenty of time, Ms. Davies.
He
Don't
also called
bully
the
me.
question.
I called the question.
He called the
Well-
question. Either follow protocol or don't.
Well, I guess no one wants to follow protocol because you talk about the AUP, and this is West Coast Arborist. First off, Mr. Erlinson and Mr. Dixon knew of Mr. Streets, and I
You know,
talked to Mr. Erlinson.
we're out of
about
order, and I'd
letting
ask the
him know.
city attorney to direct this. We called the question. We're either voting or we're not.
Seems to me now's the time to vote.
Sounds like you're
Okay.
running the meeting, so go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'll-
There's a motion and a second.
Yeah, I'll
You
go
want to
ahead
take
and.
the AUP off of tonight, which isn't on here, and move it to, and I don't think moving this to August 7th, when there's no television cameras for the record, is a good idea.
Well, you know what,
I
then
think that
I'll
that's a
requ-
bad
I'll-
idea. I
I'll
think we should
request
move
that we
all of
have it- I'll have
Should move
request
all
right
of it
there.
to where it's on television, where everyone's here.
Perfectly fine.
Well, yeah,
whatever you
that's
guys
fine.
wanna do.
But if you want to move this up, I will also request that we have
I
this
just
on
think
television.
put it all on a public calendar.
You know?
Again, put it all where everyone can see everything. You keep going with
I'm
these special
fine.
meetings, so move the thing from August 7th to August 15th. Everything goes to the 15th. I mean, honestly, guys, you know, you got a lot of people here. You've got to ask the question. They're calling the question.
Excuse me,
Please
Attorney
ask them
Dixon.
the question.
I believe
All
that the
in
question
favor?
was called.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? No. Again, we had 2 public speakers on here, so I don't know how that works either. I guess they're out, right, Mr. Dixon?
Well, the item has been continued.
Yeah, great.
They can come back and respond, and I welcome them to come back and respond.
Yeah, again, folks, they just pulled, again,
Question
another
was-
one. This had nothing to do with West Coast, this had nothing to do with the Poon Group, this had nothing to do.
Mayor, you're out of order
with any of
again.
that
We've,
stuff.
we finished that. Please
Okay.
move on.
Well, stay here, because there's 2 more items that relate to it.
Correct.
And this may be very interesting, so please don't leave, seriously.
Jeez.
I would stay here and watch these 2. Okay, Mr. Erlinson, we have a report from Public Works. Is that you, or is that going to be Mr. Abizada?
No, I
More
will.
items. I strongly suggest you stay to watch this.
Mr. Mayor, I will give the report.
All right.
So just some background. In July of 2015, the city competitively bid the tree maintenance services in which 2 proposals were received. On October 6th of 2015, the city council approved an agreement for a 3-year term with West Coast Arborists, Inc., or as I'm going to call it going forward, WCA, for tree maintenance services. The original agreement set the contract limit at $140,000 per year at that time. All services to be provided are at the fixed unit prices set forth in the original proposal dated August 14th of 2015. West Coast Arborists, Inc. has an excellent performance and safety record with Laguna Niguel, and they have been a very responsive and reliable contractor. In response to devastation caused by a beetle known as Polyphagus shot borer, or PSB, the tree care budget was increased by a one-time adjustment of $310,000 during the City Council's mid-year budget review held on February 7th of 2017. PCHB has destroyed thousands of trees in California, and the city of Laguna Niguel has not been immune to this insect. It can be expected that we will remove over 360 infected trees through this process. The cost to remove these PSHB infected trees ranges from about $500 to $1,000 each due to the complicated procedure required to process the debris per the prescribed protocol. In order to respond rapidly to PC or PSHB, and in light of eucalyptus tree failures in Southern California, staff responded with the selective removals of these trees. The work was performed by WCA due to both their historical work product with the city and using the fixed bid unit prices from the bid items received and approved in October of 2015. So staff prepared an analysis of activity relating to WCA from the inception of the original agreement dated October 6th of 2015 through July 28th of 2017. This is attachment A in your report. This analysis reflected the following. For October 7, 2015 through September 30, 2016, so the first contract period, the first year of the contract, staff expended $301,951, or $161,951, greater than the original agreement limit and budget amount of $140,000 per annum. For the second contract period, which encompassed October 1 of 2016 through July 28 of 2017, actually it would end September 30 of 2017, so we're still in the second year of the contract. Staff has expended $387,743, or $247,743 greater than the agreement limit of $140,000 per annum. However, that amount expended is within the budgetary authority adopted by all 5 city council members during the fiscal year 2016-17 mid-year budget review held on February 7th, 2017. On February 7th of 2017, a contract between WCA and the city was in force. With PSB creating a public safety issue, staff believed timing was of the essence to remove these diseased trees. As such, staff contacted WCA and was able to have WCA commit to holding the previously competitively bid per unit pricing in the original agreement steady. An amendment to the WCA agreement was placed on the May 16th, 2017 City Council agenda. Copy of the original agenda and the staff report dated May 16th of 2017 are provided as attachments to this report as attachment C. The May 16, 2017 WCA contract amendment was subsequently pulled off of the May 16th, 2017 City Council meeting agenda after a conversation between you, Mayor Slusewitz, and former City Manager Rod Foster, during which Mayor Slusewitz threatened former City Manager Rod Foster if the item was not removed from the council agenda dated May 16th of 2017, as described in the, and quote, statement of Rod Foster regarding West Coast arborists, end quote, attached to this report. That's your attachment D. Had the WCA amendment not been removed from the agenda on May 16th of 2017, the city would be in full compliance with its purchasing policy and municipal code. The actions of Mayor Slusewitz leading up to the city council meeting on May 16th of 2017 resulted in the city being out of compliance, and the reason for the amendment being on the agenda this evening. City council approval is needed to amend the WCA contract amount to address the recent damage and subsequent removal of the trees. The first amendment to the WCA agreement has been prepared to account for the increased contract activity, as attachment E. The fiscal impact related to this item is for fiscal year 16-17 amended mid-year budget did include an additional appropriation of $310,000 to fund the extra tree maintenance. It is the recommendation to the City Council that the First Amendment to the West Coast Arborists Incorporated Agreement be amended for tree maintenance services and authorize the city manager to execute the document. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Okay, great. This time I'm going to go first to use my mayoral power as I can. I have several concerns with this agenda item. First, the city overspent its budget by several $100,000 in fiscal year 2015-2016 on tree maintenance contracts with this same vendor. I have no assurance that we will not encounter the same circumstance with this contract. Second, prior to the mid-year budget review just a few short months ago, we were on pace again to once again exceed our tree trimming contract by several $100,000. Third, I cannot tell based on the staff report what monies have been spent on routine tree trimming, which is what the October 2015 contract, which is included in the staff report, says, routine tree trimming versus the $300,000 that were being requested, which is $345,000, for fighting a beetle and a special infestation. I fear that the money being spent to fight the beetle is really going to routine tree maintenance due to poor budgeting, according to what the staff is recommending. They're saying they want to add on to a contract that was in existence for routine tree trimming. It's part of the item. It's right there. Under West Coast Arborists providing tree maintenance, it's right in the staff report. So, you know, I'm going to be voting against this item, but I want to go through a couple of this sort of thing here too, because it's really important. I have a few questions. As entered into the staff report, the original contract was October 7th, 2015. Is that correct?
Yes, that was the effective date, the beginning
The
date.
amount approved by the city council was for $140,000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, now I'm looking at your October 6th, 2015 staff report. Under the fiscal impacts, page 3. On the section of the staff report, the last two sentences say staff is not requesting an increase in funding at this time since the overall budget is sufficient for the recommended costs. Staff will review the budget at mid-year and determine if any extra adjustments are necessary to cover the annual costs and the extra work. You see that?
I do.
Thank you so much. In the mid-year budget for 15-16, would have been somewhere around January or February 2016. And by February 5th, 2016, just 3 months into the contract, according to the spreadsheet that you've provided here, the city expended $64,000, or nearly half of the budget amount. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Based off the first 3 months of expenditures, do you think it was reasonable then that an accounting professional would be able to forecast that at the current rate of expenditures, the monies approved by the council would be exhausted in the first 7 months of the contract? 3 months we're at 64,000, simple math.
Well, the way I'll respond to it is this, Mayor Slusowicz. Under the normal maintenance agreement, we would have hit the $140,000, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nasser. But the diseased trees, which we've been dealing with for quite some time now because of the extended drought in California, required removal. I will admit, for fiscal year 15-16, if you want to call it fiscal year, but it's not a fiscal year. The contract term is in the first year, October 7th through September 30th, so it actually spans 2 fiscal years, okay? Staff did make a mistake. I mean, there's no defense to that. But in fiscal year 16-17, as you call it, staff did do the right thing. And that item was pulled, and now here we are today.
How big was the mistake, Mr. Erlinson, because it's on the report?
You know, staff spent $161,000 more during the first contract term than was allowed under the original agreement.
And the authorized amount was $140,000, so it was more than double.
That's correct.
That staff did an unauthorized purchase of taxpayer money to West Coast Arborist without council authorization. Who authorized those transactions, Mr. Erlinson?
Who authorized those transactions? That would have been most likely public works staff, including Mr. Albazade, okay, and probably ultimately myself and or a subordinate who was approving AP for me at the time.
Who else would be responsible for knowing what's going on in our purchasing department for the city of Laguna Niguel when we do unauthorized transactions against the municipal code, which is the municipal law of the city of Laguna Niguel? Who else would be involved with that? Whose responsibility in the chain of command would also be involved with that?
In the chain of command, well, basically, everybody in the city if it comes out of a specific department.
Correct. Including this council body and the city manager, Rod Foster. This council body authorized transactions of over double to West Coast Arborists in 2015-16. We broke our own laws. We cannot claim to be fiscally conservative. But we do depend on staff. So we could blame staff, and we could say staff should have protected us, which is true because we didn't know, but it is our duty to know. In addition, it's not just staff's responsibility. Is it anyone else's? Let's say the vendor, Mr. Erlinson. Do they have a responsibility in this whole program?
I think any party to an agreement would understand what's in their contract.
So what happens if the vendor starts doing work for over $140,000 and we didn't authorize it? What happens then?
I can't speak for WCA.
Well, I'll tell you what happens then. What happens is the vendor is on the hook. We don't have to pay them. If you hire a contractor to do work for you and you tell them it's going to be $140,000 and they do 160 or 180, or in this case 300 and what's the number again? How much was it? 300. I don't have it in front of me.
For which term?
15-16. We're still on that. We're going to get to the next year afterwards.
Total $301,000.
So $301,000 when you authorize $140,000, and that happens, you don't have to pay them. You really don't, because it's unauthorized work. Mr. Dixon, why do we have to pay West Coast Arborists for this work for 15-16? Why did we have to pay them, sir?
Well, to me, the most important aspect is the city requested that West Coast Arborists provide this work. You had a situation where apparently there was a need for additional tree services over what was anticipated. City staff went ahead and continued to request that they provide the services. These warrants were put on warrant registers. The warrant registers were approved by the council. I would,
Thank you for throwing us under the bus. Yes, we did approve those.
may I finish, please?
Please.
I would strongly suggest that West Coast arborists should have been keeping track, but the most important thing to me on this is, did we get the services that we requested? Did Public Works get the necessary work to take care of the beetles, take care of the dead and dying trees? And from everything I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, we got the services that we paid for.
Mr. Dixon, to me, that's the least important thing, is did we get our money's worth? What the taxpayer really needs to understand here is we have policies and procedures that are set by this council body. They're the laws of the municipal code of the great city of Laguna Niguel. If we don't follow them on West Coast Arborist, what else aren't we following the rules on? Which is why, my reason is why they keep burying the AUP and the audit. They don't want to get it out there. They also don't want to extend the audit to look at everything else. This is one vendor out of anywhere between 400 and 800 vendors. And we're $150,000 over on this just in 1 year. That could relate, when we got $81 million in the bank, that's great, we're fat and happy, but maybe we should have $90 million in the bank. And Mr. Dixon, I'll further state that staff was not requesting, go back to my first question here to Mr. Erlinson. On October 6th, we did this, and it said that they're going to look at this at mid-year budget. And they didn't look at it mid-year budget. Now all of a sudden you're telling me that we had to spend the $300,000. Why didn't we look at it, sir?
What I said was, we requested, city staff requested that West Coast Arborists provide the funds. Should we have looked at the mid-year budget? Yes, we should have. Apparently, we didn't. But that does not negate the fact
That we got a good deal. Okay, that's great. We didn't follow our own rules, but we got a good deal. I don't care what kind of deal we got. If the city of Laguna Niguel cannot follow the protections of taxpayer money that are set forth in the laws of the city of Laguna Niguel, why do we have law enforcement here to begin with? Why do we have patrolmen following the streets? These are the laws of the city. And as a taxpayer, I would be deeply concerned when you have our finance director, who's now acting as interim city manager, and our city attorney making excuses saying it was our intent to follow the law. Sir, that does not count.
I didn't say we were.
Okay, then we got a good deal.
No, I didn't say that either. What I said was, we got what we requested. Now, if you want to right now go back and try to rethink the actions that were done by city public works staff, that's fine.
Yeah, we broke the law. Yes, I will reconsider it. We broke the municipal code.
Not break the municipal code.
Okay, we didn't, when we spent $301,000, when a $140,000 contract, our city attorney is saying we didn't break the municipal code. Please explain that, sir.
Exactly what I'm saying. What the municipal code requires in this situation for maintenance contracts is competitive bidding. If you have a maintenance contract over $25,000, you're required to competitively bid it. That's exactly what we did. We started with West Coast Arborists in 1999. We continued contracts with them up to 2014. 2015, we decided to let's go out and find, see if there's other vendors out here. Had a competitive bidding process. We only got 2 vendors, West Coast and an outfit called Great Scott that we had never heard of. West Coast was given the contract.
For $140,000. I'm following you.
It was a $420,000 contract, $140,000 for each of 3 years. At that point, the key, and you and I agree on this, is the $140,000 cap. We're past the municipal code. The violation was going over that cap, and that
Okay,
shouldn't
what
have
law
happened.
does that violate?
Doesn't violate any law. It violates the contract, and that's important. That's very important.
Oh, wait a minute, sir. You're saying that we have a law that's a hard cap of $140,000.
No, you have a contractual provision.
A contractual contract for $140,000. And when we spend more than that, which is unauthorized transactions, unauthorized,
Correct.
we're not breaking any rules.
No, I didn't say that. You're not breaking the municipal code. You're breaking rules. You're breaking the contract. And that's
So
important.
we're not rule followers, but we didn't break the municipal code, but you're saying that staff from Rod Foster on down to Nasser Abasada and his team and the city council, we just don't follow rules. That's what you're saying,
I'm
Mr.?
not saying that at all. I'm saying.
Did
that-
we follow the
What I'm
rules?
saying, in this particular case, you did not.
We didn't follow, did we break the rules or didn't we break the rules?
You broke the cap. I've said that four
We
or
broke
five
the
times.
cap, but that's not breaking the
140,000 went
rules.
over. It is. It's breaking the rules of the contract.
So we did break the rules. I'm just trying to get this straight. Yeah, I'll let you
Whatever
speak.
you want to call it.
I'm not going to call it. I want you to call it. You're the city attorney, sir. I'm asking questions. I'm not saying anything, but asking questions.
Correct.
Did we break the rules? The city of Laguna Niguel in 2050, we did. That's a sure.
Yes.
Okay, and these are taxpayer monies. The city attorney just admitted to the council, to everybody, that we don't follow the rules when it comes to your money.
No, that's not what I said. I said in this one case.
In this one case.
Situation,
How many
West
vendors do we
Coast-
have, Mr. Erlinson? I asked you this today.
Right now, we have, going back to July 1 of 2016, we have 674 active vendors.
Okay, and this is just the one that we're looking at today. So the other 675, you have ultimate confidence that we never broke any rules on any of those going back over the last 4 years. Is that true, Mr. Dixon? You have you don't have confidence in that?
I don't have confidence as to every one of those.
So we may have broken the rules at other times when it comes to taxpayers' monies.
No.
You don't know?
No, I don't.
Yeah, I think that's why, looking at this as further audit, or maybe turning it over to the district attorney, as I was trying to do in the last item, made some sense, but I guess I'm out of order again. I have some more questions.
Mayor, just a quick reminder, though, this isn't a court case.
No, it's
This
not.
isn't a trial, and your behavior, I expect to see you be respectful to the staff. If you have questions, talk to them with a respectful manner. But they are not here to be grilled. You know what, you have a question, and then let them answer it. And if it's not the answer you like, that's too bad. I mean, you have to, but you're putting words in there. So I want to hear this, but you owe respect to this staff in the way that you talk to them. This isn't, you aren't judge and jury here. So please, could we please listen to what they have to say? Be respectful. Thank you.
I appreciate that, but again, it's very confusing. I'm just hoping for some answers. I'm not putting words in their mouth, but I'll do a better job on that. But I do get very excited when I see items get pulled that, people come to watch and they deal with taxpayer money. And I think that's why people are here. I think that's why the media is here. And I don't want to have us obfuscate the truth when it comes to whether it was a municipal code or just the rule on how we broke taxpayer money. What I'd like to direct your attention to is on the columns that you put together on the spreadsheet, attachment A. It shows in 9/9 of 2016, on that first item there, it shows that we have $217,000 spent, $217,609 on a $140,000 contract. Is that correct, Mr. Erlinson?
That's correct.
Yeah, so we're $77,000 out of budget with West Coast Arborist, right?
Out of budget?
Broke the rules.
All right.
Unauthorized transactions that weren't approved by the
Can you
city
read the date?
council.
Read the date to me one more time, please.
9/9/2016.
9/9 of 2016.
The highest entry, 217,609.
217,609.
Contract's
you're correct.
140,000.
That's correct.
Contract's 140,000.
That's correct.
So we spent $77,000 that was not authorized, correct?
Not under the contract.
Okay.
We broke the cap, as the city attorney has stated.
And in the back here, we have this proposal for tree maintenance service for one Rod Foster at his home on 9/21. So Mr. Foster had West Coast Arborists come to his home to do some tree maintenance when we were $77,000 of unauthorized transactions of taxpayer money that didn't follow the protections that we have in place of how we issue contracts in the city. Is that correct?
So are you asking me, I want to be very
Is
clear
it
here.
9/20? I'm reading this thing. It says 9/21, I believe, it's in the staff report. It has Mr. Foster's receipt or invoice. And at 9/9, we were 77,000 of unauthorized transactions to West Coast Arborist. And then it appears that Mr. Foster had West Coast Arborist at his house on 9/21. It's just right here. Is that correct?
That's what the documentation says, so I would have to assume that
Does,
it's
yeah.
correct.
Are you aware that West Coast Arborist does not do any tree maintenance service for residential housing? They only do it for contract cities?
I would know. I don't use WC at my home. I do my own yard work.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is, Mr. Erlinson, your department was the one that was $77,000 over budget on 9/9. I don't think humor is really a good spot right now, but that's fine if that's what you want to take it.
No,
But it is true. It seems to me that Mr. Foster used unfair advantage of his position of authority when he was signing the contracts to do unauthorized transactions with West Coast Arborist to have people come to his house and do some work. Whether he paid or not, that remains to be seen, which is again why we on the last item think that we should have an outside body come in and investigate that and see what the heck is going on here, because clearly we're in a situation where we're breaking the rules and we're not following procedures, you know, at all. It just really isn't a really good situation. All right.
I know, Mayor,
So
that we'd
in-
all like to,
I'm-
you know,
I still
have our
have the
voices
floor.
heard as well.
I'll let you have the
You
floor when I'm
certainly
done.
do.
Thank you. All right, so between the period of 10/7/16 and 12/17, do you know if any payments were made to West Coast Arborist during that period?
Yes, payments were made. The detail.
How much?
Through July 28th.
No, through 12/7/15, to 10/7, on your report here, sir, I'm still on the first page over here where I got that Mr. Foster, 77,000, had work done at his house. It says 10/7/15 to 9/30/16.
Yeah.
And the first entry is 12/7/15, so there's 2 months unaccounted for. Do you know if there were any payments made to West Coast Arborist during that period of 10/7/16
No.
to 12/7/15?
Otherwise, they'd be in the GL detail.
Okay, very good. So we started it and we didn't have anything to go. According to the spreadsheet, the monies approved by the council of $140,000 were totally exhausted on June 28th, 2016. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Hang on. After June 28, in spite of the fact that the budgeted money was exhausted, did the city continue to make payments to West Coast Arborist?
That's correct.
So by the middle of September 20, the city had made approximately $70,000 in payments that hadn't been previously authorized, correct?
Not under the contract. If you're talking about the contract cap,
Contract cap.
yeah, I think we're all clear on that. Nobody's debating that.
Nobody's debating what, again, you've got me.
That the
Contract
city,
cap.
that the city broke the cap in,
Okay.
under the first year of the contract.
So we paid an additional $161,951 to West Coast Arborist by 11/7/2016. 1 year into the contract, we spent $301,951 on $140,000, which is $161,951 of unauthorized taxpayer money being transacted to West Coast Arborist. And again, I was at a point earlier about whose responsibility is. It is our responsibility. It is staff's responsibility. That's why we hire them. It is West Coast Arborist's responsibility, because if they go over, we don't have to pay them. I talked about that earlier. Now, I have held up a couple items that are going to be next on the agendas of payment, and I don't feel we have to pay them because they did work that wasn't contracted. The situation is according to the rules that we broke, according to city attorney, West Coast Arborist has an obligation to go back. The vendor has to go back to the contractor, the city in this case, and get approval or let them know that we broke the $140,000 threshold. So we continued to pay them because my contention was and continues to be, especially if we approve the next item on the agenda, because we shouldn't, that someone from West Coast Arborist let Mr. Abizada know, let Mr. Erlinson know, Terry Dixon know, Mr. Foster know, someone from the city had to have known, because once again, you don't have to pay for work that you don't contract. The only reason you have to pay them is you acknowledge. So human error is involved. Is that right, Mr. Erlinson?
Yes, human error is involved.
So we
And
knew, West Coast Arborists told us that we're over the contract, and we did nothing.
West Coast Arborists never said we were over the contract.
Okay, that's what I asked, human error is involved. You said, yes, it is. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well,
West Coast, you're saying they never told us, right?
They never told me.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. I want to move, and we could do this next time or whenever, that we claw back $409,000, $694 from West Coast Arborists, because that was unapproved and unauthorized transaction. We don't owe them the money. This is great. I'm going to be a hero. I love it. I want us to do that tomorrow. Let's get the money back, because we don't owe it. It's just like you at home. If you have a contractor come over and they give you a written bid, you sign it, they sign it. You can't change that unless you say, hey, look, we're gonna change the deal. If you don't change the deal and they continue to do work, we get the money back. Perfect. We're gonna get $409,694 back from West Coast Arborists. I'm a hero. Thank you very much. Okay. So again, these unapproved monies, these excess payments, they were done by staff. Ultimately, the person in charge is City Manager Foster, correct?
He's the purchasing officer per the municipal code, but he can assign that authority to anybody he wants to. The municipal code permits that.
Well, I find something interesting. You said that he's the authority, but he can assign it to someone else if he chooses to. He wrote a letter that's included somewhere in this report, and the very start of the letter says, this is the start of the letter. It was on or about April 25th when I first heard about potential concerns regarding West Coast Arborist. That's his opening line. Yet, you're saying either he didn't know what was going on, because he abdicates all responsibility, or he did know what was going on when he had these guys come to his house on September 21st, 2016, even though he's claiming he didn't know anything about it till April 25th. And he was $77,000 in approval of unauthorized transactions, and he was having a vendor who does not do any residential work. You can't get that, you can't get that, your neighbors can't get that, no one can get that deal that he got. And Mr. Erlinson, again, what you're saying is that he could either abdicate, which means he had no idea what was going on any of these contracts, and that's how he was running our taxpayer money, or he was tracking it and he knew, and we're $77,000 of unauthorized transaction. Which is it, sir?
As you recall, we created a purchasing manager position, something you supported, to help departments track their expenditures and their contracts. The municipal code, okay, section 36-2 of the municipal code states that department directors are responsible for all their purchases and all their contracts, okay? We created a purchasing manager position to help the department heads track their contracts. When that purchasing manager position was filled in September of 2015, Mr. Foster decided to transfer or delegate his purchasing officer authority to that purchasing manager. Okay, the municipal code provides for that. Okay, so at that point, the purchasing officer or his or her designee, which would have been the purchasing manager, would have been tracking all of these costs along with the respective department director.
And who is you, correct?
No, that would be Nasser Abuzadeh.
Okay, Mr. Abuzadeh. Okay, so the purchasing manager didn't report to you?
He reported to me. He didn't work for me. He worked for the city manager.
So he reported to the city manager?
And he had more authority over purchasing than I did because he was made the purchasing officer.
And did we have any policies in place, Mr. Erlinson, where since the city manager abdicated his $25,000 signing limit to the purchasing manager, that someone like yourself, who he somewhat reported to, or his boss, Mr. Foster, had a system where he would go back and check on it and sign off on any of this stuff?
He would, with purchase orders, absolutely. With contracts, I'm sure the purchasing manager did. You know, this is, I believe, a one-off.
I'm sorry, the purchasing manager did. I didn't understand that. The question is, the purchasing manager had the $25,000 signing limit.
Up to.
And so he took it from the city manager, even though he's a manager. The org chart is, you've got the city manager on top, he's the CEO. You've got the department heads over here. They can sign for $10,000. The city manager can sign for up to $25,000. Anything over has got to go to city council. But if we break $140,000 or any of these things, then we just didn't follow the rules. But nonetheless, he assigns this to a purchasing manager that's lower than the directors. Did this purchasing manager have a system, or did the city of Laguna Niguel have a system where when he would sign for something to up to $25,000, that either you, as the finance director, his quasi-boss, or the city manager, his real direct, had a system where he would at least sign off to show, hey, we spent under $25,000. I checked his work. Do we have that in place, sir?
I would check budget authority. I would make sure all quotes were in place, competitively bid based upon the municipal code and the purchasing policy. As far as tracking contracts, the purchasing manager at the time had a list of all contracts that he was tracking. He developed that list. That was one
About
of the
spending
first things.
limits. Did anyone check the spending limits of the purchasing manager?
That was part of his duties.
His
along
duties. Who's his? Mr. Foster's or the purchasing manager?
Purchasing manager.
I got that. So the purchasing manager, who's below the city manager and below the directors, who can sign for up to $25,000. So someone should check his work to make sure he doesn't sign for over $25,000. Who was doing that? Who was checking the purchasing manager's work? It would probably be you or Mr. Foster. Was any, or no one? What is the answer to that one?
I don't know. I
You're the
can say
finance
it wasn't me.
director, sir.
No, I can,
We
no, I
know
can say
the
it
answer
wasn't-
to that.
No, I can
No
say it
one was
wasn't me.
checking it, Mr. Erlinson. You know the answer to that one. No one was checking it. And we've had this discussion before in great detail, Mr. Erlinson. It's another situation where we have rules in place. They abdicate the rules to a manager, and nobody does the cross-check. And so when you're saying this is a one-off, you're saying that we have one contract. There's no other $10,000, $25,000 spending limit, or the other 600 and whatever, 83 other contracts that we have any other issues with, Mr. Erlinson. Is that what you're saying? Because you said you believe this is a one-off.
When I mean one-off, I mean nobody bats 1,000. I wish we all did. Okay? I can't say that with 100% certainty that this is the only one. Okay? But what I probably could say with almost absolute certainty is the magnitude that we're talking about here in 15, 16, if you want to call it that, if you want to call it by fiscal year, this is probably a one-off.
I would think 16, 17, the number was even bigger. Anyways, all right, Mr. Erlinson, I mean, so you say 15, 16 was a one-off, and you're saying it's one contract. I'm saying there's no way it's one contract. Release the AUP. Folks, come back when that's out there, and you'll see that this is a lot wider than that, and this is your taxpayer money. If you don't really care about taxpayer money, you know, that's okay. But I think if you care, I would tell your friends, your neighbors, and everyone about this, because they're admitting that they have a problem. Let me point something out that's in the newspaper here, Mr. Erlinson. I've got to ask a question. You said the audit by Pun Group of the city's purchasing department, city's purchasing manager Marvin Cruz resigned in May. There's some question as to whether or not he resigned or was fired. Which one was it?
I will let Ms. Debbie Bell respond to that, being the head of HR.
This is a confidential personnel matter that we should not be talking about in public, and I will start off with that information. In this particular case, when the decision for Mr. Cruz to leave the city was made by the city in terms of when, it was his option how he chose to leave, and he did resign.
Okay. And again, if there's a problem with releasing this information, Mr. Erlinson put it in the paper right over here, Ms. Bell, just to let you know. So again, that was when, Mr. Erlinson, when did he resign? May 10th. okay, of this year, 2017. Now, Erlinson, the finance director who's serving as interim city manager, this is further in the paper, said in an interview Thursday he was not made aware the city is overspent until he and city attorney Terry Dixon received copies of the draft audit report in 2012. It says in the paper here. So you fired the guy in May.
You mean July 12th of 2017?
2017 for the 15-16 audit year. So you fired the guy in May for failure to follow the policies, correct? You fired the guy in May to failure to follow the policies. I mean, that's what you're saying. You fired the guilty party.
Mr. Cruz
He resigned.
Mr. Cruz did not work for me. Okay, he worked directly for the city manager. He was under contract with city manager Foster.
Okay, but you're the finance director. You had no idea that we overspent money in 2015-16. We fire a guy who's the purchasing manager, and no one looks at the numbers. No one even looks at the numbers to say, gosh, we're firing this guy because we failed to hold a cap of 140,000. Let's blame him. And we didn't look back. Did you just take my word for it? I mean, I know I've been called a bully. Did I cause that problem, or was there some research done, sir?
No, we did some research after we were informed.
Informed?
By the results of the Poon Group. We received some results. We verified it, and that's when it ended up on the agenda for May 16th of 2017.
And where did you get those results, sir?
We had around the end of April, I think it was about April 25th, maybe a day or two.
Probably
either way.
2 weeks earlier, but yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We had a audit exit interview where we were told of some of the preliminary findings. And because we didn't see the work, we didn't know what they were testing. You know, these AUPs are a surprise audit or surprise engagement. We have no idea what's happening.
So I shared some of the information with you prior to the budget meeting up in Mr. Foster's office, correct?
On May 10th.
Okay. And you decided to fire Marvin Cruz, or allow him to resign on May 10th. And did you do any additional research to see these accusations that were overspending out of contract? Did you do any research to say, you know, gosh, let's look back at a couple of contracts or one contract, because it says here that you didn't know until July 12th, 2017 that you overspent a year before. Are you not looking at the data, Mr. Erlinson, or is Mr. Foster not looking at the data? Because this is taxpayer money. This is serious. These are our money. And you're basically sounding to me like, and I believe everyone here, that no one seems to be watching it. And when you fire a guy for cause or allow him to terminate for cause, you don't even do research to see what this guy's been doing, that maybe we should self-report, maybe we should bring to the city council some truth, some facts, actual facts, that, hey, let's look at our money. Something's amiss here. This is taxpayer money. This is serious stuff. I'm going to add to that. I've been accused of bullying. All I have been doing for months, my situation really completely came apart. I just want to explain this to you guys. Everything in the city started to go downhill after the discovery of West Coast Arborist. I ran on an agenda or on a platform with two colleagues here. There was no talk of bullying through 2 elections. They were endorsing me. Mr. Ming in the back spent money, raised money to help me win. But when the truth came out of whatever, you guys make your own opinions here. The press is here. You guys make your own opinion. I hope people are watching at home. But the rules were broken when it came to money. We were overspending a tremendous amount of money. My relationship went downhill. I cannot speculate onto why my colleagues is the reaction as it is. I think we should all be shocked, concerned, and be in a hurried state to fix the internal controls when it comes to taxpayer money, if we're really serious about our jobs as council members. We have no choice. We have huge omissions of the fiduciary responsibility that we have to honor the protocols in place for our purchasing procedures. We don't follow them. They say it's a one-off. I've said for a few meetings now, can we expand the audit? Can we bring the AUP, which was 1 day away 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and now today? It is supposedly tomorrow. Can we bring this forward so all the council members can see and hear for themselves that this is a huge problem? This was discovered through a standard audit. I followed all the procedures and the rules. Now, could I have done better? Absolutely. I could have done better. There's no doubt. In April, when this came to be, I wanted to bring Mr. Foster to a closed session meeting so everyone could hear about this. But I asked Mr. Dixon, is this termination for cause? He assured me it wasn't. At this point, I'm not sure. That's why I think the district attorney needs to get involved, but we tabled that for another day. Because, again, we're out of compliance, and he's getting work done at his house by someone that nobody else, none of your neighbors and friends that live in Laguna Niguel can get. That seems to be using your position of power, but that's, that's not it. I should have brought it on in April, and in May, what had happened, contrary to the letter that he has here, in May, I alerted Mr. Foster, who asked me to not bring this forward because he was interviewing for Lake Forest and Dana Point. As a professional courtesy, I let that happen. That is my mistake. In May, I alerted him that West Coast Arborist was on the agenda. I have the text, and I could provide it for anyone who wants it. So Rod, I'm surprised to see this May 16th item for West Coast Arborist. I have no option but to tell the truth about that contract. They're asking us to approve a contract where the money's already spent. No. You guys hear this. There is a problem with this whole West Coast Arborist deal. If we vote on this right now and approve, we're just saying, hey, we want to cover back pay. The money's already spent. It's on the report. I mean, take a look at it. We're almost there in terms of money spent. And again, as I understand it, sir, just make sure I'm correct on this. We're talking about fiscal years, even though you laid this out in contract years. What matters is fiscal years. Is that correct, sir?
No, that's not correct.
Okay. So this increase would give us on contract year, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Anyways, I should have pressed back then. The city attorney said, no, this is not a terminable offense for cause. I think that it is now. That's my opinion.
You never asked me any such question.
Okay, fine. Look, we're in a situation where taxpayers weren't treated well on this. I've been trying to bring this to light. The taxpayers weren't treated well on this. And none of this would have come up if I hadn't have caught it. So when Mr. Foster talks about bullying and stuff starting in April, let's look back. This stuff started back in 2015, 2016, when we went double, hundreds of thousands of dollars over budget, $301,000, and then Mr. Foster had work done on his house in an unfair advantage. I don't think that that's a good program at all, and I think that you guys approving this is a very, very bad idea, because why do we need to cover up the tracks and muddy the water? Let's just let this ride out a little bit longer. Let's not pay them any monies due. Let's get their involvement in here. The West Coast Arborists, if we owe them money, which they claimed that we owe them money, we have no contract in place. We're going to go back for the $419,000, so we don't really owe them any money right now. I mean, unless, of course, they told us. If they told Mr. Abazada in Public Works that allowed this thing to go hundreds of thousands of dollars over budget, or Mr. Erlinson, or Mr. Foster, with the aid of Mr. Dixon, watching over all this stuff, then great, then we'll have to pay them. But to approve this contract today as is, that is a horrible idea given the relevance of the information. Let me just go back to one thing that was said at the last meeting. This is very important, because at the last meeting, I listened to the tape. Ms. Davies said, I'm going to tell you that if any of us see concern with this, we will act on this. I hope you see some concern. Mr. Jennings says, we should do the right thing. We are duty-bound to follow the policies and procedures that both define and limit our positions. Anything else is completely unacceptable. There's no gray area in this regard. There's no gray area. He said, I told the mayor privately, and I'll say this on the dais, if there's 1 ounce, this is according to Mr. Jennings, 1 ounce of truth relating to the audit report. Again, they just told you that, yeah, we broke the rules and we were $301,000 over in 15-16. So if there's 1 ounce, according to Mr. Jennings, of truth relating to the audit report, relating to malfeasance, that this
Actually, I'm gonna stop you right there, and I'm gonna correct you. It was 161,000 over in 15-16, not 301,000 over.
Yeah, we spent 301. It was 161,000 over taxpayer-approved money. He says all 5 of us will share the same opinion. Not anyone. We will not allow anyone to take money that is unauthorized. It will never happen, period. He said this at 1 hour and 22 minutes and 24 seconds into the last meeting, and you can go look that up or listen to it. It's available. The city clerk, Ms. Gomez, will allow that for you. If you want, I can give you the timestamps on the other ones as well. But again, they did just table until the next meeting, turning this over to the DA, even though this is what they said about it 1 week and 1 day ago.
We getting close to the end?
You know, we called the question a little early. I wasn't quite done, so I guess we can share our pain. Okay, according to my recollection, the mid-year budget review, as evidenced by today's staff report, the council authorized a one-time expenditure of $310,000 in mid-year budget to combat the effects of the beetle. Is that your recollection as well?
It is.
Mr. Dixon, is that your recollection as well?
Yes.
Okay. Listen to the tape as well. Now, again, authorization to mid-year budget has nothing to do with a contract. I was talking earlier about general maintenance, which is what the contract was for, and an infestation, as they call it in the staff report, of a beetle bug. Infestation does not sound like, to me, like general problems. It sounds like a special deal. Now, so we should have done, according to our policies and procedures, municipal code, it's in here 3.7.9, something like that. We should have done a request for bid, an RFP, and we should have gotten bids on that to see what would happen on that. We didn't do that. We were supposed to add an amendment to West Coast Arborist if that was our choice. We didn't do that either. Even though time after time, including the July 18th meeting, we added an item, for a third correction, a third amendment to professional services agreement, ICF, under item 15 on our very last meeting. We didn't come back once, we came back twice after the original contract. Staff is trying to tell you that, well, we talked about it in budget. I listened to the budget meeting. The words West Coast Arborists were never mentioned. We never talked about giving them the $310,000. We just said, hey, we got to budget money. We have to budget money to fight an infestation. Now, I've already proved everything in 15-16. We're on 16-17 here. Budgeting, saying we're going to allow for money, is not how you do business. We do business with contracts. Everything we do has a contract attached to it. It itemized. The city of Laguna Niguel is willing to pay you X, $140,000, for the following services. Lay them all out. And then at the end of those services, this is how we're going to terminate the contract. This is how we're going to add to the contract. If we don't follow the contract, we are not following the rules, as we put it, of the city of Laguna Niguel. If we have rules, we as a council body should follow them. That's what we should do. If we don't like the rules, we should vote on them and change the rules. But as a council, to not follow the rules, that's unacceptable. That's not how we call ourselves conservatives. That's not how we should run the great city of Laguna Niguel. So turn to the staff report for May 16, 2017. The meeting related to the West Coast Arborist contract. The document signed by both Mr. Dix and Mr. Foster. According to this document, the council being requested to sign off on is a one-time adjustment of $345,000. Is that correct?
Let me turn to the page, if I may. Okay. Attachment. Yes, 345,000. I see the number you're looking at.
Now again, so we said we're going to budget some at mid-year budget February 7th, and then we come back and we say, well, let's do 345. So we didn't budget for that extra $35,000. Now again,
Actually, that's not true. Okay, 310,000 was authorized by the city council and increased. Okay, the maintenance tree services account in the parks maintenance budget. The additional 35,000 was transferred administratively under the city manager's budget authority from another function in Public Works to the maintenance, the tree maintenance account in Parks Maintenance. So the increase to that account was 345,000 to deal with this bug infestation.
Yeah,
Council only had to approve 310,000 of that.
which again, a bug infestation does not sound like routine maintenance. So that's why, West Coast Arborist was doing routine maintenance. A bug infestation probably should have had its own, request for proposal and gotten bids for the $345,000. But $35,000 may not seem like a lot of money, but it's significant, especially when it's taxpayer money. It's what a teacher's starting salary is. Here's my question. Can you help me understand how it is that on February 2017, we're told 310 is needed to fight the beetle? We approved that amount in our mid-year budget. Then on May 16th, the figure magically jumps 13% or 35,000. And now the council is asked to approve 345 at that time. And now here we are 3 months later and the numbers again decreased to 310.
Because the way the analysis is laid out, okay, the analysis that you asked me to prepare, and I used that same analysis, although adjusted a little bit in this item, okay, because I did the work, okay, the true increase to, I didn't want to get into a discussion about general ledger accounts with everybody, because we could be here for 8 hours talking about general ledger accounts. 310,000 was authorized by the city council to be transferred from the capital projects fund to the public works operating budget. Okay, that was the increase into the general fund. The additional 35,000 that is in this report, okay, was transferred from another account in another function of the public works operating budget to this same account. So the net increase was $310,000. But 345 was transferred into the account that Nassar identified to have the work performed, where all that work would be charged.
Okay, Mr. Erlinson, in your professional opinion, how do we make sure, or stated differently, what protocols must we have in place so that Laguna Niguel, the finance director entrusted to watch our taxpayer money, is immediately apprised of expenditures in excess of what the council authorized? And what steps as a council can we take to make sure we're apprised of expenditures in excess of what was budgeted?
Well, I'll tell you, the city council took one step already, and that's you authorized me to get a new software system for the city on July 18th, July 18th. Okay, right now we're under a manual purchasing system. We're still using 4-copy purchase orders. We don't have a purchasing module in our system. We're operating under purchasing like it's 1950. The new software that you approved, and my main reason for coming to council with the new software, and asking for the funds as part of the 16-17 budget cycle was for this reason. Purchasing is tough under a manual system, okay, for anybody. The new system will have electronic approvals, okay? Purchase orders will be electronic, contracts will be electronic. And if an invoice or something comes in and it exceeds the purchase order amount, it will not allow that invoice to be processed. That's how this new system works. We've already taken steps to correct this. But this is that step was before this AUP that you're talking about. And all of this, everything that will come out in the AUP, okay, which WCA is the main thing in the AUP. I'm not going to say any more about that. It's going to correct things like this.
Mr. Erlinson, and I understand that computers and systems and processes only work if the people who use them follow up. Here's going to be the proof of whether or not what you just said is true or not. If we can get the $409,000 back from West Coast Arborist, it will show that they did not tell us, that they did not come back to us and say, hey, look, we're doing work over the $140,000 over 2 years. Because if they did, and we have to pay them the $409,000, and that's a good charge, then the best computer in the world won't work if we get a call from the vendor and says we're going over, and someone, whether it's Mr. Abizada, Mr. Erlinson, Mr. Foster, or Mr. Dixon, or anyone else in this organization overrule that, which is what probably happened, unless we get $409,000 back, and then you guys can thank me later, then it means that someone told us anyways, and the best computer in the world will not work. I got a couple final questions. I'm going to wrap this up. Work done at Rod's house. Again, the example you gave in the paper said Staples, Mr. Erlinson. Staples offers products and services to municipalities like the city and ordinary taxpayers at their retail locations. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. West Coast Arborist sells its services to municipalities. They don't sell it to the ordinary taxpayers the same way Staples sells services to ordinary taxpayers. It'd be like buying from the people who buy from Staples. You and I can't get that deal. Your neighbor can't get that deal. Mr. Erlinson, does that concern you that Mr. Foster took advantage of a deal that none of us in this room, outside maybe this body that's sitting up here, the taxpayers in this room could get?
I'm not going to comment on Mr. Foster's deal. I don't know what his deal was. I'm not familiar with any of it, other than the documentation that you provided to City Attorney Dixon and I. I'm not familiar with if WCA does residential work or not.
I believe Mr. Dixon said that Mr. Foster provided this documentation. He allowed the West Coast Arborist to do it. So it doesn't concern you at all that Mr. Foster, when we were $77,000 of unauthorized transactions, had work done at his house by a company who does not do work for residential people. That doesn't concern you then, Mr. Erlinson, at all?
No, here's what, I'll tell you what concerns me. If there is illegal or unethical behavior, that definitely concerns me, okay? I'm not going to comment on Mr. Foster other than what I've already said.
Okay, how about you, Mr.
Foster
Dixon?
can answer for
Does
himself.
that concern you at all, that he had this work done at his house?
No, it does not.
Doesn't concern you at all?
The reason why it doesn't, Mayor Slusowicz, is I saw the bill, I saw the canceled check. It looked reasonable to me, $2,500. I have no reason to disbelieve that he paid that money to West Coast Arborists. I don't know whether or not they have any such policy that they only do work for governmental entities and they never do work for any sort of private residences. What I do know is that the work was done and it was paid for.
I phoned West Coast Arborist corporate office on July 28th at 3:11 p.m. I asked them if they'd come trim trees to my residence, and Rebecca, who answered the phone, said, we don't do any residential work. We're only a city contractor. We only do city contract work. But Mr. Dixon, I mean, if it found out that no one else could have done it, he took that advantage of his authority, would that concern you at all? If you found out that that was true?
Yeah, it would bother me a little bit. I'd want to check into it. I'd want to find out whether or not it's really true.
Because if you found out it was true. Now, when I brought this to you, you said this is an determinable offense. You said, matter of fact, on July 5th, when I brought this to you, let's just go to that date. July 5th, I brought this as part of the audit that we're going to deal with in the future, and you said you have nothing here. That's what you said. You said this isn't a big deal. You said this really isn't a big deal at all. You said that Brant was a much bigger deal than this. Do you recall that conversation?
Yeah, I recall that conversation.
Okay.
That's not exactly what I said. What I said was relative to West Coast Arborists and the 2016-17 year that we were talking about. I was well aware that the money had been budgeted. I was well aware that the work had been done. I was well aware that we had gone through a competitive bidding process to get to that point. I was well aware that we had moved forward with the work, and I had no concerns about the expenditures that had been made at that point.
Yeah, well, at the time, we were talking about the audit, the AUP, and it had 15,
That's
16 on it
correct.
as well, sir.
Yeah,
And basically what...
let me finish if I might. The audit report showed as item 10 the two West Coast Arborist items. I had known about those, at least I had known about the 16-17 one from before. We'd had different discussions about that relative to moving ahead with the contract that was needed to be put into place. The problem that we had, again, the 2016-17 year, was that we failed, admittedly, to do a simple contract amendment to increase that appropriation from 140 to 140 plus the 310 or the 345 to 450. Everybody knew at the time that that was what was going to take place. Like I said, we just recently competitively bid West Coast Arborist work. For the first time in a number of years, we had found out that we only had two bidders out there that could do the work, West Coast and something called Great Scott.
That was at that time, sir. That's at a point in time. You don't know, maybe every other contractor like Park West was fully booked up and they didn't bid. But if we'd have bid maybe, and when we went over budget, well advance of this in April of 2016, in April.
I have no reason to believe
that. Right?
No reason to believe that whatsoever. West Coast had been doing most of the work in South County for years. Good contractor, good prices. We didn't really have time to go ahead and rebid, do a new RFP process.
It's August. We didn't have time?
What do you mean it's August?
It is August 1st, 2017. We were talking about something that happened in mid-year budget, February 7th. You just said we didn't have time to do this.
Yeah, in February, March, April, that's the time period we're talking about. We're not talking about August.
We couldn't put an item on the agenda like we had just last meeting, that increases a contract. You're saying we didn't have time to do it, even though there's an infestation.
What I'm saying is we could have and should have.
Okay, we should have. Thank you. We should have followed the rules.
That's what I've been saying all along.
We should have followed the rules, but we didn't. We didn't in 15-16. We didn't in 17-18 to the tune of $400,000 of taxpayer money. This is one contract that we're looking at out of 637. What do you think? It's a rhetorical question. Do you think that the city finance director who's been promoted to city manager, with Mr. Dixon sitting there saying he didn't really have many concerns with this, and now they're trying to backdate, this is what the item we're on, they wanted to backdate a West Coast Arborist item, which I'm strongly suggesting we don't muddy the waters. Let's get this investigated, even though we got to wait 2 more weeks to vote on whether or not we want this investigated, because council feels that this isn't really a big deal with your hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money. I've been screaming this for a while. They've had the audit in their hands for a long time. They could have gone to the Poon Group and asked these questions. They could have asked anybody these questions about how this works and why we should have done it, as Mr. Dixon says, but failed to follow the rules. Once again, This goes back to when this started, months and months ago, well before any allegations of bullying or any kind of attitude on my part started, because about 7, 8 months ago, I was on a ballot with these guys, and they were endorsing me, telling me how great I was to all their friends, as I was for them to all theirs. We can't speculate on why we're in this situation with my colleagues, but through a standard audit, following the procedures, and once Mr. Dixon on July 5th told me that I didn't know what I was talking about, I said I had a scheduled appointment for July 10th with West Coast with Poon Group auditors, and said, hey, give me a chance to figure out what the heck this is before we turn this over to staff, which was following the procedures, because I'd already turned it over to staff, as Mr. John Mark Jennings has said many times. I turned it over and they fired a guy. So we could have done better, but once again, the old news is what I did. The new news is me bringing this forward almost single-handedly to the detriment of my reputation by my colleagues, by staff, by Mr. Foster in particular, who again, in 2 weeks, I'm going to demand that we turn him over to an investigation of the DA. But are these the people? Mr. Abizada, who wrote a letter scathing about me, Mr. Erlinson, who's part of the report, and Mr. Rod Foster, claiming these things. Look, I've said from the beginning, this is abuse of taxpayer resources. I was elected to represent and look out for the taxpayer. None of this would have happened on the audit if it weren't for me. The taxpayers weren't treated well. I am looking out for you. I'm going to ask my colleagues to join in my leadership. Maybe we can re-pull the item and move this to the DA, or maybe we don't want to, but that's fine. But we all have specialties. Taxpayers elected a pretty good team. I'm the financial guy of that team. You lose respect for the financials. We all say that public safety is job number one with Chief Barr and his team, who do a great job. I agree. We always talk about that, but it's not. Fiduciary responsibility of taxpayer money is job number one, because if we run out of money, if we become Bell because we're failing to letting the money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, go through our fingers like sand on the beach, then we will be Bell, and we will not be able to provide you protection from police services. If we squander and look the other way and blame somebody else and say it's not my fault, it wasn't my job, he reported to somebody else who left. Again, the taxpayers weren't treated well. I've been trying to bring this to light. Again, I'm going to urge my colleagues to vote no on this and the next item until we get someone in here. And that's what I think. We have an opportunity to bring an outside city manager in. That's what the taxpayer ought to demand. Bring somebody in from the outside in this interim basis and clean up this mess. Wait till we see the audit. Now I get a second shot of that 2 weeks from now. When we see the audit, it's going to read significantly worse. And these guys all know it because they've seen it. And we got to question what's going on over here. We've got to bring an adult into the room. Thank you very much. Who's going next? Any other comments for my colleagues? Or are we going to vote?
You want to
Go ahead, sir.
Where to begin? Well, first of all, I have had many discussions with the city attorney, many discussions with the finance director, who's now our interim city manager, to try to get to the bottom of this. The mayor's attributing quotes to me, and I stand by those quotes. I don't disagree with any of that. I told the city excuse me, Steve, the interim city manager today that I want to get to the bottom of it. I'm absolutely convinced that there was a problem with staff, and I heard that tonight, that something went wrong, and it shouldn't have gone wrong. And to the great detriment of the taxpayers, we spent money that was not appropriately inside of a contract. That shouldn't happen. And I think there's a comeuppance that needs to happen there. I also told him that when we came back from our interim budget meeting earlier this year, that's information that we should have had. What I don't have is any of the legal authorities necessary, or I'm sorry, the legal authorities supporting the mayor's presumption, which I think that's what it is at this point, that we have some ability to not either abide by the contracts or to not pay the funds. I mean, I would like to have a very thorough understanding of exactly what was requested of West Coast Arborist, whether or not it was needed, whether or not we received the services that we requested that they provide, and whether or not we received that value. Because that's important, because if we actually needed the services, then this is a procedural guffaw that needs to be looked into so that it never happens again, if we actually needed the services. If we didn't need those services, I got a completely different set of opinions that we'd have to look even further and dig into that. So I think it's fair. I'm not, the mayor's of the opinion I disagree with him somehow. I don't. I believe that this is an important thing to look at. And the West Coast Arborist issue is a completely separate question from everything else that's been going on in the room, which I'm sure most of that was directed at. And so from that, I got most of my questions answered today. We do an agenda review for the public. I go through these things, I ask the questions, they answer the questions, and it came back that exactly what you heard tonight, that staff blew it. And at some place down the line, that got out of hand. When it was brought to light, they tried to make a correction, attack in their position. That heard sometime in May of this year. There was a disagreement between the mayor and the city manager, which I was in no way part of or knew anything about. And that was a problem which removed it from our agenda, which would have been a good time to talk about it. But here we sit, and I don't know the authority. What I don't know is what actually happened. I can see numbers on the page, and the staff report certainly includes all that. But I don't know if we actually needed the services. What's reported to us is that we had trees in town that were falling down or had the jeopardy of falling down, and that other cities, Whittier, I think, was one, that had some fatalities for these trees falling down. So there was some agency moving on that. Why that was never brought back to the city council? Great question. I'd like to know the answer to that. Why we weren't looped in, I don't know. Who knew about that inside City Hall at the time that they were supposed to know about it? I don't know that either yet. So I'm very concerned about those things. That's something that we have to look into. To the extent that any of this colored anything in anyone's mind that somehow we don't care about that, that's wrong. We do. I think I speak for everyone. We want to get to the bottom of it. I don't throw accusations around quite like that because I don't have the facts yet. And just 7 days ago, we, in a 4-to-1 vote, asked this to be looked into. I want that information back. I want the Poon Group audit. I want the city attorney and our outside counsel to let me know what's going on with this thing. I want to know the details. And when I have those details, I'll act on them. So I don't think my statement at the last meeting should be taken in or out of context. It stands for itself. I will not tolerate the abuse of taxpayer funds. I don't know where you got the idea that we didn't. So we need to look into that. As for the agenda item tonight, what I would like to know is what is the law behind this presumption that somehow we have the ability to not pay that? And I have no interest in listening to the presentation that smile was all about. I want to know from somebody that's hired to do this, and you engage somebody to give us the authority to tell us what our obligations are and what our rights are when we get inside or outside that contract. Because it's not just whether or not we have the contract. We also have liability here. We receive some services. So this cuts both ways. So we have a fiduciary duty to the taxpayers to make sure we don't incur liability for you by somehow messing around on an ad hoc basis here, trying to do something on this contract. This stuff's important, and we got to get to the bottom of it. I'm looking at the city attorney right now because I'm asking him to do it. And I think it's part of our investigation that we asked and we voted on 4-1 last week. That's what I asked for. I want all of that stuff back. I have a lot of other comments, and I'm going to save them for another part in this presentation, but for that, I release the floor to my colleagues.
Yeah, again, Mr. Jennings.
Don't need the follow-up. Let your colleagues talk.
Can I talk now?
No, it's my turn.
No, it's my turn. You had a turn.
This will be 1 second here. Mr. Jennings, I never thought for a second that you would be
Come on, don't.
disagreeing with me once I read your
Excuse
comments.
me, Mayor Slusowitz, it is
But
my turn to
This
speak.
was pulled, the May 16th
Mayor
item
Slusowitz, it is
was
my
pulled.
turn to speak.
Go ahead, I'll wait, I'll go at the end. Go ahead.
Okay, you know, it's a fallacy for anyone to imply that we don't care and we don't take this seriously, or that we're not being transparent. What we keep asking for is all the information to be able to make a decision, because that's what you expect of us. You don't expect us to go off with half the information and make a decision that could bring any liability to the city, or us make an incorrect decision. I'm concerned about a number of things on this. Yes, there was a failure in staff in the controls that are in place. We see that. As a council, we need to, as we move forward, decide, is this punitive or corrective, what we want to do? Do we want to make sure this doesn't happen again, or are we looking for something else? And I think that prism that we look through is very important, if we are being punitive or corrective about this. And as far as the expenditures over the contract amount for this year, we knew about that at mid-year budget. We approved the dollars at mid-year budget. What didn't happen, and you know, this is something that maybe staff would work on, is that it was slow bringing the amended contract to us, which we would have had on May 16th and already have approved it and not be having this discussion had it not been pulled. But I am concerned about why, with the expenditures that happened in 2015 to 16, why are we just finding out about that now? So that's something that I think, you know, we really need to look at and see what controls are in place. I know that we did approve the new software for our accounting system, which should really be helping, and that's why we approved it for things like that, because we were, you know, for a city this great, we've been operating on an antiquated system. So, but we do need more information, and that's all that we're asking for. As far as not paying bills for services that we've received, for services that we've asked for, that doesn't sit right with me. I understand what the mayor is saying about he doesn't think we have to pay it. But I guess as a Rotarian, I think we should pay it. It's the right thing to do. We receive the services. You know, when I could walk, before I had this foot thing, I would walk around the lake at the regional park. If you want to see devastation of trees coming down, you just go to the regional park and look at all of those circles on the ground and how many hundreds of trees our area has lost due to this beetle. So it is a public safety issue. So those trees, some of them may have needed to come down. This is something that maybe Public Works should have been brought to us, and I think we would want to review our internal controls and how information is brought to the city. But at this point in time, I am not comfortable for not paying for work and services that have been provided to the residents of this city, and that work has been requested by the city. And that's all I have to say right now.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple notes. I echo the sentiments of my council members and the mayor when it comes to, I believe that we definitely need to look into new protocol procedures. Obviously, there was a mistake here. This slipped out. I think having the software will definitely help, but again, I think as a council, we need to sit down and, you know, get together and talk about the procedures and policies we want to see going forward. That's imperative. A couple questions. I want to know if you're able to answer this, Attorney Dixon, if we don't make these payments, because obviously we're out of compliance. We've been out of compliance for a while since the mayor pulled the item on May.
I didn't pull the item. Ms. Didbell, please correct her.
According to the statement from former city manager Rod Foster, he pulled the item based on the fact that the mayor intimidated him into pulling the item off the agenda.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
then
tell the truth. You got it. I was gonna tell the truth that we were out of compliance.
So
and
I'm
he had
sorry,
work
am
done at
I,
his house.
I'm
That's
sorry.
the bullying.
I'm sorry, are we, are you
go
on
ahead.
now or am I? And I'm a little confused.
I'm sorry. You're
Okay,
right.
thank you. Let's bring up that issue in regards to bullying. We made this very clear. These are two different items. We're not the ones up here trying to mesh the two items, the mayor's behavior and comments that have come, and the AUP. They're two different items. He likes to try to combine the fact that we're doing this because of this, but it's not. That's why it was important that we had a special meeting in regards to those issues only, that we could address those. That's why we're having this item tonight to deal with the audit, the AUP and items. And I want to correct you because you had said that we all had time to view the audit. We haven't gotten the audit. As you make very
Dixon,
clear.
you told me that you emailed the rest of the council on around July 12th. I was not included in that email, and I'd asked for it. You said I didn't have to, but you assured me that you mailed the AUP, emailed the
Well,
AUP.
that's what I'm saying though, but once again, you keep making it very clear, AUP audit. You specified the audit.
I misspoke.
Correct, thank you. Okay, so I wanted to make that clear. We have not seen an audit because an audit hasn't been completed, for the record. In regards to Mr. Foster, there's a few issues that I want to find out. First of all, does West Coast do residential? Have they done residential work in the past? And then I also have a question. I see that there's an invoice and a work order. Is there a reason why there isn't is there a copy of payment that you have showing proof of payment?
Yes.
Why isn't this included with the other two items?
It wasn't my decision. I believe it was Mayor Sluswitz's decision.
Mayor Sluswitz, you had made a comment that who knows if he even paid for it.
Yeah, I don't have any proof of payment. Proof of payment is to show a check and then the endorsed side of the opposite side. Does Mr. Dixon have that? Because he claimed to have that earlier. I don't have that. Do you have any proof of payment, sir?
I have a copy of the check.
The front of the check?
It's the front of the check.
That's like, I can't remember, write one now. I mean, a front of a check is not proof of payment. Again, I'm an investment guy, and maybe that's why I'm up here, and that's my role.
Okay,
But
if
proof
I
of
could
payment-
please continue
proof-
to
wait a
talk.
minute.
No,
There's no
no.
proof of payment.
You know what, let
There
me.
is no proof of payment.
Mayor, I have the floor. Thank
Go
you.
ahead. You asked
Okay.
a question. You
What
turned it to me.
what I'd like to do is request proof of payment.
Sure.
I think that's very important in regards to that issue. This is a big deal. These are taxpayer dollars. And the insinuation that the mayor acts as if we want to bury this or we don't care is so false. And for you to make allegations like that about us, you have no authority to do that, no right. We care just as much as you do. I don't consider myself a hero. I know you do. But I don't think anyone's a hero when it comes to this. We're here to work together as a team to do what's right for the city. That's what we're here for. I want to find out more information as well. I want to find out if we don't make payments, are we liable? I mean, that's also a situation if we don't go ahead, because I believe if we don't go ahead and get in compliance here, we're then out of compliance with the two checks and the next item. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
If you don't amend the agreement tonight, then technically, yeah, because now you're bumping up you're increasing the overage over on the cap even more so.
So now there's two items that were out of compliance.
Correct.
Do we have any information in regards to any liability the city holds if we don't make payments?
Councilmember Davies, if we don't make the payments, certainly there's going to be claims against us by West Coast Arborists. And I would submit to you, go back to May, when we attempted to amend the contract to provide for the increased appropriation. At that point, seems to me that liability may very well become fixed. And the reason why I say that is because of the stoppage of that amendment. In other words, we knew at that point, that we're raising a question about payment. And I suspect that West Coast Arborists now would look at this from the perspective that the city has gone ahead, didn't approve the First Amendment, continued to request services, continued to pay for the services as provided by West Coast Arborists, and here we now are in July. I would think that West Coast Arborists would have a very good lawsuit against the city if we now decided that we weren't going to pay for these two last checks, when we have that background of having paid for services for the last several months.
Thank you. And I just want to
Councilwoman
reiterate.
Davies,
Yes.
could I was just going to offer a friendly amendment to that question, and I hope you
Please,
don't mind.
go ahead.
One backup, if we do make the payments, does that then create a new contract, or are we now ratifying an old contract, and that removes the ability to exercise the clawback that the mayor's proposed? I don't know the legal authority on that yet, and it hasn't been provided to us yet. But I don't want to do something that jeopardizes whatever our legal positions might be.
Well, a couple of thoughts, if I might.
Certainly.
To me, the primary point is that we've been requesting the services. West Coast Arborists has been providing the services. We have been routinely paying for those services until now. Even though we didn't have an agreement, the signed agreement, as we should have, I would have the concern that we've, either by implication or in some other fashion, we've created a contractual relation. I don't know how we can now go and say, oh, all bets are off. We wanted to get that money back from April, May, June. That would concern me. Another thing, if you looked at it going forward, right now, if I was West Coast Arborist, I'd say, we're not going to provide any tree services. There's a serious question about whether or not we're going to get payment. Maybe there's a serious question. So I think we're probably without a tree service contractor right now. Can't say that with certainty. I haven't talked to the West Coast Arborists about this. I mean, you go back to, you talk about illegal expenditures and what's illegal and what isn't, and what's authorized and what isn't. Let's go back and talk about 2015, 2016. Councilmember, excuse me, Mayor Slusowitz is absolutely correct. We went over the cap. Shouldn't have. Does that mean that that's an illegal expenditure, that we can now, even though we've paid the money and continue to pay the money, we can now say it's illegal? We get to claw back the money? I think there's a substantial risk in that. I'd be very careful about making that decision without knowing a lot more facts in terms of who requested what, when, and where, who continued to request services, who continued to provide them. I would think it'd be very difficult to sit here in, August of 2017 and go back a couple of years and say, aha, look what we found, illegal expenditure, we want all our money back. Not to mention just the general notion of dealing with contractors. I mean, how do you sign up anybody when you have a situation where you've gone back against a contractor 2 years later and found, some deficiencies in your contractual proceedings, and you're now using that to say, we don't owe you any money, or you owe us money back. This is not a simple area. It's not easy to say, no authorization, get money back. So I would suggest to you that a couple of things. Somebody better think about whether or not we need tree services right now. And if we do need tree services, some sort of an arrangement, a contract needs to be done, amendment or a new contract. And if you want, we can look in more detail at this whole idea of what really is and what isn't an illegal expenditure, and when do you have it implied, in fact, contract, and when is there to estoppel. These are not as simple questions as simply saying, illegal expenditure, we get our money back.
Thank you, Attorney. I have a question for Director Abzadi then. Let's just, for instance, West Coast decides, well, you know what, we're not going to get paid, we're going to stop services. Can you tell me, coming from you, is that something you consider very serious, us not having a tree contractor, and especially depending how time regards to safety of the people?
Yes, we definitely would have a problem because even if we decide to terminate the West Coast Arborist contract, we will have to go out with a request for proposals, get proposals, come back, and it typically takes about 3 months. So we would not have a contract in place for 3 months. So, and we've been talking about the devastation by this beetle. That's an ongoing problem, unfortunately. It's still an issue for us, and it does create a liability. So it is a huge risk for the city.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, I'm going to allege everybody's talking about contractors. We don't have a contract. We've spent all the money in the contract. There is no contract. So when you talk about being out of compliance, compliance with what? What contract do we have with them? We don't have a legal contract with them.
True. We do have a legal contract.
No,
We certainly
we
do.
moved some money in mid-year budget.
No, you don't
$310,000
understand.
to
We have a
take care of the
contract,
tree shot.
3-year contract.
Okay.
What we haven't
okay,
done,
sir,
what we
3-year
haven't done is
Go ahead.
we've gone over the cap on
Okay,
year
we've
2.
gone over the cap, which means we're contractually not obligated to pay any money more than 3 years at $140,000 is 3 times 140 is $420,000. We've spent significantly greater than that. Is that correct, Mr. Dixon?
You look at it on a per-year basis. Yes, we did. In the first
Okay.
year, we went over. We know that. We can keep saying that. We know that. In the second year, we were going over. It looked like we were over a bit. We tried to correct it, and we were stopped. We were
By
stopped
Mr.
cold.
Foster.
No,
Is
by
Ms.
you.
No.
By you.
Ms. Bell just said it. Mr. Foster stopped it. Is that correct? Let's be real clear on this. Who stopped that?
Said.
Okay, who pulled the contract? Who pulled the May 16th item? This is really important because the Orange County Register is completely wrong on this. And Ms. Bell told me she was going to send a retraction on that. Who pulled the contract? And Mr. Dixon is on tape. I could find it. It was like 1 hour and 40 minutes into the thing, and he said that the city manager pulled the contract as well last meeting on July 24th.
Read the tape. Do you have it?
Yeah, I do have it, actually, if you really
Because
need
what
it.
I said was the city manager pulled the contract because you forced him to pull it.
No, because
That's
I
what
told
said.
him, and I got a text on it. I'll say it again, and I have a text. I sent him on the Saturday before the May 16th meeting. I said, Rod, I'm surprised you have West Coast Arborist on there. You told me you were interviewing for jobs. I will rightly have to tell the truth about West Coast Arborist. If you want to call that bullying, or if he wants to call it bullying, that's fine. I call it defense of taxpayer money. But we don't have a contract with them. We're not out of compliance. I agree with Mr. Jennings. We should have a contract. What he said at the start, which again, I thought you would agree with me. The reason I quoted you guys wasn't because I thought you'd disagree with me, it's because I thought you would.
That's
But
absolute
you said-
nonsense, by the way.
You said that you thought we should figure out how we pay, what the terms are. That's what you do in a contract. You figure out how you pay and what you do it. So we are, when you talk about out of compliance, the only thing out of compliance is that we don't have a contract. We're trying to backdate a contract here on this item, and then we want to pay for money that was done that was unauthorized work. I think we all agree. What we really do is have this investigated. Let's look into it. Let's put it on hold, because I'm not saying that we're out of compliance. Maybe West Coast is out of compliance. Maybe they did work that we didn't contract for. That's what it appears to me, since we didn't contract the services. Again, it's really important that we don't pay money for that we don't have a legal and binding contract that spells out when it starts, when it ends, how much money it is as a maximum, how it gets paid for what services. Currently, we do not have that as we sit here at 9:44 on Tuesday, August 1st. There is no contract. We are not obligated to pay it. Let's get it investigated. Let's bring this all back in 2 weeks. If we're holding back, by the way, on the 2 items, one of them did get paid. Mr. Erlinson assured me that it wouldn't happen, but he said only emergency stuff, but they paid it anyway. So I think it's about 40,000 that we're holding back. That might give West Coast an opportunity to be a little bit more cooperative as we do this investigation. So again, does anyone have any other comments? I want to move that we do not pass this item until we get it investigated as part of this overall investigation. Oh, I guess we have some public comments we got to go to? Okay, very good. Let's start first with Robert Ming.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I was not going to comment tonight until you mentioned my name, and I thought maybe it would be appropriate that I did so. So first of all, we do expect you to be the taxpayers' advocates. We expect you to watch for taxpayers' dollars. That's exactly what we put you in those chairs to do. We expect you to do that by passing a budget. When you pass a budget, you tell staff how to spend the money that the taxpayers have given you. You expect staff to do exactly what's in the budget. You passed mid-year budget reviews that authorized the money to be spent. Staff did exactly what you expected them to do in the mid-year budget. They had trees cut. They told you they were going to have trees cut, and that's what they had. You should find out whether those trees were really cut and whether they were really the ones that should have been cut. But that's exactly what the council expected to have happen. That's exactly what they did. Yes, they failed to get the contract amended. That would be a great thing for them to do. They should do that now. As a matter of fact, you should do that tonight. But the point is, they did what you asked them to do in the mid-year budget. When you increased that budget, they told you what they were going to do, and then they did it. And that is how government is supposed to work. So I would like to see it corrected. I would like to see them put protocols in place so that we don't miss contract caps anymore, but that's exactly what's supposed to happen. By the way, on the point of me supporting you in the last election, yes, I did, but that was before that I knew that you were going to get in there, begin doing favors for your friends, abusing staff, and making a scene like you have tonight. If I were them, I would not want to hear you talk anymore. That's my opinion. Have a great evening.
Yeah, again, that covers the 16-17, but it doesn't cover the 160,000 we went over on 15-16. Okay, Mr. Carnahan. Nope, gone. All right, Mr. Mahoney.
Thank you.
For being here.
Appreciate you allowing me to speak. I'm the president of West Coast Arborists, and I just want to make a few things up. I wasn't going to say anything, but I thought I'd come up and at least clarify some of the things you're saying. We have been working for the city for 20 years, have had a great relationship. I think the 140,000 that they had budgeted was way under budget in reality. But once we hit the budget limit, with every invoice, we said, this is exactly where we are. We're over budget. And they continued to order work. We gave proposals. They signed for the work to be done, requested us to do the work. If we didn't do the work, then they said they were getting the budget amendment signed and approved. But for us, you know, they called and said, we need the work done. We've got lots of, throughout the parks mostly, you got a ton of dead trees, tree limbs falling, trees falling. It's a dangerous situation. We also do the tree work for the county. In the county parks, they went and got another $750,000 to deal with the pests that are out there. So you had a real problem, very little budget, but the staff had asked us to do the work. We told them what it was going to cost. They approved it. We invoiced it with the total amount spent to date of the contract. So, and there were a lot of one-time invoices, but it was all approved by staff as we did the work. So as far as doing work for residential, we do a lot of work. So we have about 1,000 employees working across the state. We don't do a lot of residential. I'd say we probably do $1 million in residential work, but we aren't out promoting. People call in, it would be a landslide for work. So we don't do a lot of residential, but we do residential and other type work. But we don't go down the street trying to sell the residential work as we go out doing it.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney. Who did you work with at staff? Because you said you kept telling them that you were over budget and they kept approving it. Who was that you worked with?
Probably 5 different people. and staff that we dealt with.
Here in Laguna Niguel.
And they've changed. The staff has changed hands within that department. But
It'd be great if you could provide those names to us of those 5. It'd
Okay.
be part of the
But
thing.
it's not like we're out there just working away and knowing we're over budget. You know, everybody knew the budget was there. We thought you were gonna get an amendment to change it, but it's very common to go over the contract amount. But a lot of times the budget is very secretive to us. We aren't really privileged to the contract amount, but a lot of times they'll come back and say, we have money in other funds, you know, and give us a proposal, and we did it, it would come out of sanitation or, you know, I'm just talking generically, that, you know, money is pulled from different items to do work. But everybody knew what the amount was. We got approval, and we were invoiced, showed the total amount of work year to date, and we were paid for it. So it's unfair to say, you know, you want to take all that money back, because all along we had told you what we were going to do, and historically, you know, we have done a great job for you, and we really appreciate the business, but have not, you know, we charged everything at the rates that are out there. So.
Yeah, no one questioned your work, sir. Your reputation's impeccable. But once again, what happened in 15-16? Because the staff's telling us they didn't say that they were gonna appropriate more money, and yet we're 160,000 over budget.
Right. What's told to us, and it's not just Laguna Niguel, this is the contract amount. We have money in other budgets, and they pull from other street funds, or they have a street widening project. We want you to do this work. It's not the general maintenance, but we'll go over and do the work for street widening, and they'll pay for that out of those funds. It's not unusual to go over that contract limit.
But then they amend the contract.
A lot of times they don't. In a lot of cities, I'd say a whole lot of them, you know, we go over the budget amount, you know, without getting an amendment by some portion from other funding sources. But everybody knows, you know, the staff, everybody knew what we were doing. The work was ordered. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Chris Street.
Great. My name's Chris Street. I'm the former treasurer of the County of Orange. I know Jerry Susowicz from being on my Treasurer Advisory Council, and I'm just really surprised the way things work here. I mean, one of the pleasures that you get to do as the treasurer is twice during the year you get to sit down for 2 hours with the grand jury and talk about your policies and procedures and how things are done according to contracts and law. Now, I'm a numbers guy, but I'm also a detail person. So I actually sent a presentation here to is it up on the slides? No? I have copies for the presentation if
He
you
has
like.
plenty of time here.
Yeah,
Here,
I have copies for each of the, may I come forward? Copies?
Ask Ms. Gomez. I think you gotta deal with her.
Okay, just a quick question, if I may. This presentation,
I'll get through my 3 minutes.
if I may, sir, this presentation, was this for item 1?
No, you just.
Submitted.
No, I'm just
asking.
asking it now.
Got a request to speak on item 2 here. Got it right in front of me.
I just wanted, I just want to make sure, because I was told that this presentation was for item 1. And this is something we had asked to hold back so that the Mayor Pro Tem would have access to this as well so we're getting it all at the same time. That is something that we had discussed.
Well, he's a member of the public. He put in a request to speak. He's got 3 minutes. Are you saying the public does not have 3 minutes to speak? No, not at all. Okay, thank you.
He can speak for 3 minutes.
Great, thank you, sir.
Well, you better get to it.
Okay,
Well,
great. First,
no, the clock gets to start when he starts speaking on this whole deal. Now that we had to start this over. So.
I haven't seen this presentation. To the extent that anybody has it, I don't know what it is.
great. I called the city and asked if I could make a presentation on this. I was going to bring my sort of knowledge of how it works in the treasurer's office of the county. And so I went through your documentation. First of all, I saw the purchasing requirements for the city of Laguna Niguel. You know, they're online, they're public. This is the Laguna Niguel Municipal Code. That means it's law. So, am I changing here? Ms. Gomez? Yeah, it's probably off. Probably, I'm trying. Okay, great. So first of all, Laguna Well has a, municipal code that's very published. It's for the public. If you take a look at it, any purchasing over 25,000 under the Laguna Well municipal code must.
You use the mic, please.
I'm sorry. Any purchasing over 25,000 must be greater than the city council approval of the purchase order or contract and explicit authorization of the city council, allowing the city manager or purchasing officer to execute a PO. It's got to be approved before. Secondly, maintenance is the same thing. It's got a different section, Laguna Well Municipal Code, but once again, this is contract law. This is a law. When you move forward, there are 400 to 800 vendors. I guess there are 687. We're talking about $27 million of purchasing a year. This was an audit of one vendor, and this guy has a 3-year contract. I mean, probably sounds like he's a good vendor. But $140,000 annual contract, West Coast billed, and the city paid $301,000 in FY 215, 216, 116 what sounds like illegal payments. Law, something that's not legal under the law is illegal. I mean, I understand that it'd be nice if we all had friends, but when you talk to the grand jury, there's legal and there's illegal. Once again, next year it was 247 of illegal payments. We're talking about a total of 409,000. There's no additional purchase orders that I could see. There's unauthorized payments made by a city executive. The city manager had yard work performed by a city vendor. That's at least a giant ethical violation. Taking a look at the corruption laws in California, corruption, breach of public trust, or an abuse of government position. This is the penal code. Every person gives or offers a bribe, any executive officer in this state with the intent to influence him with respect to an act is punishable by imprisonment in the state for 2, 3, or 4 years. For Code 68 is for every executive, ministerial officer, employee, appointee. If they take a bribe, they're subject to the same kind of issues, and they're subject to double the amount of any bribe. So nobody knows if there was money moving here, but they sure know there was a lot of illegal activity going on. And whether it was just we all get along or we don't get along, you people here on the board better get this right, or you better lawyer up. Because I can tell you, when you're in front of the grand jury, if they see any unauthorized, they call illegal activity, you're going to own it. Mr. Jennings, your comment about doing something and forming a contract by making a payment, that is absolutely California corporate law. Now, I know that from a businessman. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm surprised Mr. Dixon here didn't help you out, because if you take a look at the legal city's ethical principles for city attorneys, if you give advice consistent with the law, should not attempt to justify the course of action that is clearly unlawful. City attorneys should resist pressure to be creative, to come up with questionable legal conclusions that provide cover for elected or appointed public officials to take actions which are objectively unlikely to be in conformance with the legal constraints of the city's actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Street. Again, we don't have any actual proof that we owe any money. We don't have a contract with these guys. I'm sure that Mr. Mahoney's a nice guy. What I'd like to do is move on with the investigation. Let's investigate this. This is mostly backdating. Most of this money's been spent. The water's already out of the dam. Again, I'm going to make a motion that we do not authorize this contract until we get someone in here. And again, that someone needs to be debated by this body of who is going to, because it seems like there's a lot of people compromised. that are running the city right now and our taxpayer money. And we need to get someone in here, a third party, to look at this. And once it's all done, then we'll figure out if we legally owe Mr. Mahoney and West Coast Arborist this final payment of about $40,000. So I move we do not approve item, a recommendation of the First Amendment to West Coast Arborist. Do we have a second?
I have a couple of comments on this before we move on. A question for discussion. Wasn't it true, Mr. Dixon, question for you, wasn't it true that we did request to get the backup for the West Coast Arborist detail as part of our investigation that we approved last Monday at the special meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, so we do have an investigation that's been requested. I don't think we've gotten the report back on that, correct? All right, now I understand that's in process, correct? And part of the third party that we're discussing, Mayor, I understood, at least from my comments or conversations with the city attorney, that you are seeking the advice of outside counsel to assist you and as a third party to go into the detail about who knew what, when they knew it, and what's going on with the contracts.
Correct.
All right. It seems to me that your motion is, a week and a day late because we've already done that, and I'm expecting that to happen. I'm not changing my position in the slightest. I think it should happen, and I thought it a week ago last Monday. We've already approved that. It's supposed to be happening, and when I get it, I'll decide on it. With respect to the item tonight, I'm not certain which way to go. I completely agree with some of the speakers that if this was approved from a budgetary standpoint, that it was reasonable for the money to have been spent, and I would have expected the contract to come back. I don't know why it was not. I have no idea as I sit here why it wasn't. I'm hesitant to go back and reapprove a contract because that may compromise a legal position that I don't want to compromise at this moment, with complete deference to Mr. Mahoney, because I'm very appreciative of the services, and I'm not trying to put him in sideways with the city. What I really want to do is get to the bottom of exactly what our rights are and what our obligations are so that I can understand them and I can make a decision on it. That isn't presented to us tonight yet, but it's coming. And to the extent that we are prioritizing anything with respect to our investigation, I suspect this one is a bit more on fire in that regard, and I would expect that to be done quickly. And if it comes back, I share the sentiments with Councilwoman Genoway that if we ask for these services, I think that's because we needed these services. And if we needed these services and they were performed at a price, then we may have an obligation to do that. I am concerned about contracts. In fact, I am a lawyer and I do understand what the law is, and I don't want to get sideways with it. And so that's my thought on it. I think your motion's unnecessary because I think we already have it.
The only motion, sir, is to not approve the First Amendment to West Coast Arborist. That's the only motion on the floor right now, sir. So again, I'm looking for a second, because what I'd like to do is just wait until we find out.
Well,
and then once we find out, then we vote for it.
Well,
It's
then
very
that's not
simple.
Then you need to make a different motion because that's not
Okay,
your motion.
here's the recommendation. City Council approve First Amendment to West Coast Arborist agreement for the tree maintenance service authorized by city manager to execute the document. I make a motion that we do not approve this agreement. Do I hear a second?
I have a comment. Thank you. I echo the comments from Councilmember Jennings. This is my concern as well. It's kind of which way do we go here? You know what, are we putting the city in liability position if we don't authorize this? And if we do, are we not able to backtrack this? For me, I'm interested in wondering if it's something, as you said, this is being investigated. Before we go ahead and make a decision on this, do we go ahead and, put it down the line when we have our next meeting so we have the information to go ahead and vote on this? I mean, we're out of compliance.
Mayor, may I offer a substitute motion?
Please.
Because there's the question regarding, I've already stated my feelings that I feel is right that the city pay, but I want to see what our legal responsibilities are and not put the city into a precarious position. So I would suggest that I move that we table this until the meeting where we have the information coming back.
Second. It's the same thing, but
No, it's not.
Okay.
It's
I
not the
seconded it.
same thing.
Okay, I second it. I have a comment. You sound like you're concerned with West Coast Arborists more than you are the taxpayer. I'm more concerned with the taxpayer. If we don't know, we table it, which is why I agree with your
I'm
motion.
concerned with the taxpayer. That's why I want to make sure the
I'm with you.
taxpayer doesn't get any legal liability because of our action here tonight.
And I agree with you. That's why I seconded the motion. Again, I don't believe we're out of compliance. I think the taxpayer has a right to know whether or not we owe this money, and I think we have an obligation to find that out for the taxpayer. And I think that overweighs any implied or thought-out non-contract, since we don't have a contract with West Coast Arborists, and what the staff may have run around and done on their own, you know, and put us in this situation where we are now having voted many times to approve funds that weren't authorized by us. Okay, we got a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion?
No, I'm good.
No, I'm good.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, so that moves us to the finance. Does that, I mean, can we just by de facto say we're gonna wait on this one too and table this, Ms. Genoway, or do you want to have a discussion on whether or not we make this payment? I think they kind of go together, but it's up to you, Ms. Genoway. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Why, I think they go together unless anyone can offer any other legal advice on this.
So you want to make a motion, Ms. Genoway?
So I move that we table this to the meeting where we have the information coming back to us regarding West Coast Arborists.
I second it.
Again, that we don't approve the release of check number 93-875 payable to West Coast Arborists, the amount of $40,524 in case there's some ambiguity. But okay, we got a first and second. Any discussion?
I actually think that mischaracterized what she said. She said to table it, not to not authorize it.
Yeah, I didn't say not authorize it.
Okay, to table.
I said to table.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings.
You're welcome.
Any other comments, discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you all. Let's move on. Okay, Ms. Gomez, I might need your help here. You always tell me you're a good Girl Scout and have an extra copy for me,
I do.
Yeah. What,
if you don't mind.
of what?
I have it.
She gives us a, oh, never mind, I found it. It's kind of an outline of the agenda, just helps keep the mayor on track. It's something that's been used for some period of time. Thank you so much. Other business council reports. Wants to go first?
I will.
Okay, Mr. Genoway, Mr. Jennings.
I really appreciate everyone sticking around tonight. This is, it's important things, and it's difficult to get through. So thank you very much. Ethics are a true test of our higher self. They're not transitory, they're not conditional, and for public officials, they must never, ever be optional. The issues before the council go to the very heart of those ethics, and there are two very distinct issues. The first is the status of the city's investigation into all services provided by and payments made to West Coast Arborists. Last week, the council voted 4-1, with the mayor being the sole no vote, to commence an investigation into those issues. Those investigations are ongoing, they will be thorough, they will be comprehensive, and they will be exhaustive. Wherever they lead, we are prepared to see them through. The second issue is this council investigation into Mr. Slusewitz for the alleged improper use of his public office to extort favors and exert influence, as well as the intimidation he is alleged to have used against his accusers, which included numerous members of the public and numerous members of the staff. There is no place in public life for such behavior, and there must be very serious consequences for anyone found to be in violation thereof. These issues are, of course, separate and completely distinct. Mr. Slusewitz's efforts to blur those lines only serves to further deepen his problem. You know, Madeleine Albright once said that when our interests are clear, our values are at stake, and we can make a difference, we must act and we must lead. Here, this council has already taken the lead and demanded an investigation of the allegations against the mayor. That investigation is ongoing and will be thorough and will be unrelenting. The facts will be what they are. We are searching for the truth. St. Augustine is credited with saying that the truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it, you just have to let it loose and it'll defend itself. That's exactly what is happening. We will find the truth and prosecute it to the furthest extent of the law. It is very telling that upon the publication of the initial allegations against the mayor, others came forward to add their own stories of their alleged abuse. The mayor was quoted in the press this week that this is a council is attempting to, quote, bury, quote, the audit being conducted to get to the bottom of the West Coast arborist issue. Shame on you, sir, for even alluding to such a ridiculous thing. That position is at once both offensive and completely absurd. Indeed, the opposite is the only conclusion anyone could take given the council's action in voting 4-1 to demand an investigation into your conduct. In fact, it is Mr. Slusowitz who is directly accused of burying the audit report and refusing to turn it over. Then, when he was confronted by the city attorney with allegations that he was extorting his public office for personal favors, he threatened to release the audit report if the allegations against him weren't dropped. That's not protecting the taxpayers. That's extorting and abusing them. There is indeed only one version of reality, and any efforts to create another version will never prevail. We do not tolerate such behavior, and the public deserves that we get to the bottom of those issues. If his mayorship is in jeopardy, it has zero to do with West Coast Arborist, and it has everything to do with his alleged conduct with our residents and our staff. Differently stated, there is no causal link between the audit and the mayor's separate conduct. His alleged conduct occurred before the audit ever became an issue. That timing is very important and must not be lost on the public. As I said, those investigations are ongoing, and the public can rest assured that we'll get to the bottom of whatever happened to have occurred with both our city funds and the mayor's conduct. The truth is indeed like a lion, and that lion has now been set loose. I, for one, intend to find out where it leads, and I'll let the lion do the rest. That ends my comments.
I'm sorry, Ms. Genoway, you want to go next?
Thank you, Mayor. To start on a little lighter note, before I get into the heavier. On July 20th, we had a human trafficking workshop, and that's for the volunteers who want to work on this issue. We'll have another one on August 17th in the community room. So anyone who wants to work on how to make comments to the governor during the public comment period for Prop 57, that's what we'll be showing you how to do, and also what you can do to work on human trafficking. So that's August 17th in the community room, and then we will have another human trafficking town hall on September 21st. On the 26th, I met with Laura Fisher, the executive director at South County Outreach, toured their facility, and we discussed about the services that they provide to Laguna Niguel residents to prevent homelessness. And I want to be sure that all of our senior citizens know that food is available at South County Outreach, and some of our seniors, that's kind of a hidden issue, is the food insecurity that they may be facing with rising food prices and limited income. But South County Outreach is a great resource in our community. And also met with a group of residents who are forming a Laguna Niguel Arts Commission. So it takes a while to get that off the ground, but thank you very much to Barbara Foster for taking on this lead. Now into the heavier issues. You know, we have at least 3 issues before us, and it really dismays me, the tenor of the meeting tonight. But we have 3 issues, and I want to emphasize to our residents that they are separate issues. They are separate issues. The West Coast Arborist contract, which we all take very seriously, the failures that happened in the administration of that contract, we take very seriously, and we are looking at that. But there is a process that needs to be followed. Another issue, though, is that as a city council, we are employers. We are responsible for the work environment of our employees. We have a legal and a moral responsibility to ensure that this is not a hostile work environment and that our employees are not harassed, threatened, belittled, or badgered. When concerns arise, and they began arising around February of this year, it's our responsibility to review and investigate any foundation for those concerns. Other issues that may arise in the city do not relieve us of this responsibility. You would not want us to get sidetracked on something of this importance, and I ask that you, our residents, do not have your attention diverted by something that, through the use of certain vocabulary, is made to appear bigger and shinier. And the third issue, and one that has gained some headlines, and it's separate again from the first issue. These are all separate, and they need to be kept separate. And as a council, we are working very diligently to address each one of them separately, is pay for play. Is there an exchange for voter influence for favors? Questions about this tarnish the reputation of the council, how the city conducts business, and how the city interacts with its residents and its businesses. We take this very seriously. We have a legal, a moral, and ethical responsibility to address what has been brought before us, and we do so in a transparent manner. And this is why we have asked for a review of these issues. So I ask that you, our residents, do not commingle these issues. They are all very serious on their own. Do not let hyperbole and cross-contamination have you think for 1 minute that we are less than transparent. We are here to serve you, and we do so in a transparent manner. And for those of you who have stayed throughout the meeting, and those of you who attended earlier, thank you very much for being part of the public process of our council meetings. Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Davies.
Just a quick note before I go into other details. We have put on I'm 5th District representative for OCTA along with San Clemente City Council member, Lori Donchek and Supervisor Bartlett. We put together a workshop where we invited Public Works in our district as well as city managers and the mayors, and that was last week. We talked about the I-5 widening, we talked about the electoral improvements, we talked about the Pico construction going on. So I want to thank our Public Works Director for attending, as well as Stephen Earlson. Thank you very much. It was a great meeting. We had fantastic feedback. It's important because obviously we're going to be having construction, especially when it comes to widening the 5 for the next 5 years. And just a quick note, we are going to be adding another lane on both sides, and they will be extending the carpool lane from Alicia to Avery. In regards to the comments that my fellow council members have made, I completely echo those sentiments, and I appreciate that. I'm kind of taking it on a different level here. You know, as city council members, we should and we are held at a higher standard. We have a saying here, we're doing it the Laguna Niguel way, and to me that is a high standard that we put out there. But these last few weeks, we haven't been holding ourselves higher. We haven't been representing the Laguna Niguel way. And for that, I can tell you, has not only been disappointing, it's been sickening. You know, after these items are said and done, it won't be so much the issues that are remembered, it's going to be how we reacted to them. What came out of our mouth? Were we responsible? That's how people question, and they also look at your character. You know, I say enough of using the media for our own benefits, enough sending out emails for our own benefits, enough using city events for our own benefits. Enough. Enough. This is not Laguna Niguel way. This is not the standard that we're being held at. You know, I'm making a promise to all of you, and I appreciate you staying here. I won't be using the media, and I haven't. I won't be sending out emails, and I haven't. I won't be using city events to put my agenda out there. My pledge is to uphold the standards here. I want to be proud to say I live here in Laguna Niguel. I want to be proud to say I'm your elective. Let the facts speak for themselves, not us speaking for the facts. There's a difference there. So I'm asking my council members, take this pledge, take this promise, that we're going to act like adults. We're going to let the facts speak for themselves. We're not going to go and abuse the media, abuse social media, to be able to try to get our point across the way we see it, because those aren't facts. Those are interpretations. And there's a big difference between facts and interpretation. And I think it's very irresponsible for any of us to go out there and start putting our opinion and our facts. We have an incredible city. Our job is to work together as a team. We have issues that we're dealing with. Let's do it professionally. Let's do it maturely. Let's let the facts speak for themselves so that we can make good decisions. But anyone that goes out there and uses any format to put their own opinion out there when there are no facts to back it up at this point isn't doing you a favor. It's not helping the city's reputation. I want to be able to walk away, whatever happens from here, and I want people to say, you know what, that was a tough decision, but you know what? I have to admit, that city, that council, they did the right thing. They didn't try to take each other down. They put the city first. They put the public first. They were ethical. They were moral. And they knew what was best for the city. So that's what I'm going to ask the rest of the council. That is my promise to you. We wait till we have the facts. We don't interpret the facts. Thank you.
Great. Things started again to go downhill with me when staff recognized that I started questioning the finances around the city. You know, on July 24th, they were talking about June. Today it's April. You know, it was before that. It was when I started questioning it. Talk about pay for play when we don't have a contract and someone starts asking questions, and we have Chris Street talking about legal obligations to the taxpayers. You know, people who make $150,000 to $250,000 a year get very serious about their jobs. And they start coming up with all kinds of things that could be implied as bullying or whatever it is. If you think that I wanted to put myself on the front page of the Orange County Register last week, that was when you guys put that item on the agenda. So when you say using the media, that wasn't me using the media. But they did actually contact me and ask me my version, and subsequently there was other things, but I don't control the media. It's a fact that we failed to protect the taxpayer. It's a fact that it was a huge omission of our fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayer. It's a fact that we need to tighten our internal controls when it comes to our purchasing policies and it comes to money. It's also a fact that the city manager had work done on his house, and we don't know if that was legal or illegal. We have no idea, and that's a fact as well. I'm going to say this. When the voters elected the five of us to this body, I think they did a pretty good job. You had Lori Davies, former mayor, very actively involved in county issues, state issues, brings back all kinds of great ideas in terms of what needs to be done, you know, on a regional basis that might affect the city. John Mark Jennings, an attorney. It's always great to have an attorney on this body. You know, when you go to a court of law, there's two attorneys, they oppose each other. I know we have our city attorney, but having another attorney on here could be very, very helpful. Ms. Genoway deals a lot with senior issues, very involved on a county level, deals with youth as well, brings a lot to this body. And Fred Minigar, transportation expert, brings a lot of public works expertise. And my financial expertise, I think, whether you like the way I said it tonight or didn't like the way I said it tonight, what I said tonight has a big impact. And I know that we all recognize it. When I was quoting you guys, I was quoting you because I figured you would all agree with me. And what I was hoping you guys would see is that as a team, as long as we respect and treat each other courteously from the beginning, we get along really well, and we could do a good job for the city and for the taxpayers. But if we choose to work independently and figure that one avenue is maligned and not as important, and we don't value their input, And we start getting distracted with accusations of plaques on a wall and parts in a small play where there's no malfeasance whatsoever, then we all have to become experts at everything. We all have to know everything about finance. We all have to know everything about public works. We have to know everything about seniors, youth, the law, and we all have to become experts, or the taxpayers can question our acumen that we bring to this body. Again, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Let's go around the room. Let's start with Chief Matthew Barr. Was there a request to speak, sir, that we missed? Did I miss it, Ms. Gomez?
It might be up there.
I'm sorry, sir. I apologize. We had a lot of these. Okay, sir. Does anyone have any problem with him speaking? I certainly don't. Okay, I'm sorry. Can you give your name and address? I'll take responsibility for that one. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead. Name and address, please.
My name is Paul Willems. I'm a resident of Laguna Niguel. My address is 16 Camry Heights, Laguna Niguel. Tonight I have 3 items that I need to bring to the council's attention. First, in a recent telephone conversation with Director Jerry Golden, associated with the Community Theater, Mr. Jerry Slusovitz repeatedly demanded that Mr. Jerry Golden accept a quid pro quo arrangement, which by definition is highly unethical and possibly illegal. I'm recommending that the council majority ask City Attorney Terry Dixon to elaborate on this issue. Second item, I'm proposing that the council majority adopt a resolution to censor Mr. Jerry Trusovic. Once again, I'm asking the council majority to ask City Attorney Terry Dixon to elaborate on this issue as well. Third issue, this is an urgent appeal to all our dedicated city employees. Please do not resign due to the fact that in the near future, Mr. Jerry Slusovic will be removed from office, either voluntarily or involuntarily, period. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bell and Mr. Erlinson, I'll come back to you since you're the, Ms. Bell, go ahead as the interim assistant city manager.
Just wanted to announce that the city manager recruitment opened officially today on the Ralph Anderson website. It's also posted on the city's website. The closing date for applications is September 8th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon? Ms. North? Mr. Orduna? Ms. Gomez? Ms. Giglio?
Couple quick things. Big events coming up. We have our second to last concert this Friday, August 4th at 6:30 at Crown Valley Park. It's a No Doubt tribute. On Tuesday, August 8th, we're dedicating the entry improvements at Crown Valley Park at 10 a.m. The construction is almost done, so we're really excited about that. And Shakespeare by the Sea presents Taming of the Shrew on Sunday, August 13th from 7 to 9. It's a free event at Crown Valley Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rosemary. Mr. Abasada?
Just a quick item that in advance of the dedication next week for the Tier 2 project, there'll be a little bit of paint this week. We'll be paving the entrance. So I'd like to request those who can stay away from the park for the next couple of days to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Erlinson?
Nothing more this evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. With that, I want to thank everyone for attending. This meeting is over at 10:27:28.
do not believe there'll be a report out.
Okay.